Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 28th of January. Today, after weeks of pressure over the post office scandal, the chairman has now resigned as new leadership is tasked with restoring faith in the beleaguered institution.
A 2020 election rematch is looking more and more likely now as Donald Trump takes aim at Joe Biden during a rally in Nevada overnight.
Don't let the budget blues get you down. A new campaign being launched today to help us improve our finances in 2024.
United Nations has hit back at 9 countries for halting funding over the UNRWA over allegations some staff may have helped during the Hamas attack.
Aidan McKee's got your sport this morning.
Yes, indeed. Non-league Maidstone United put the romance back into the FA Cup by pulling off one of the great upsets of modern times by winning at Ipswich. Marcus Rashford, the Man United striker, meanwhile, could be in hot water for being spotted in a Belfast nightclub 2 nights in a row. And we'll update you on England's cricket progress in India.
And let's catch up with the weather now. Here's Craig Snell.
Good morning. It's going to be a mild day for all of us out there, but we will see the return of some wind and rain. Find out where in a little bit.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I could do with a bit of help, actually, this morning.
Oh, yeah, from whom?
From everybody watching and listening, please. If you want to get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com, because it's in all the papers about traitors It's on the front of the Sun. Traitors winner Harry says he'll take Molly to Bali and all. It's in all the papers about traitors. I don't know what it is.
No, me either. No, absolutely. Is it a game show?
I don't know.
It's one of those sort of reality-type game shows.
I've sort of somehow missed out on this social thing. So can someone please tell me what it is?
It's some sort of a game show with lots of different people, and the aim is to knock each other out by being horrible to each other or something.
Oh.
Because there are several columnists saying, I don't want to watch it. I've tried watching it, and it's just a programme about people being horrible to each other.
Oh, really?
Which is what I think also of Succession. I've tried. Everybody goes on about how brilliant Succession is.
Yeah,
I've tried.
Not like it.
And if you just want to sit in front of the television and watch a drama where everybody's really, really horrible and really nasty to each other, then you think, why would I do that?
A bit hard, isn't it? But if you could fill me in on the details, please do.
It's Claudia Winkleman, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
She hosts it, and
everybody
says she does a very, very good job. But the rest of it is just about contestants being nasty to each other and betraying each other.
I see.
I think that's what it's about.
That doesn't sound very nice.
Well, no, I know. But
maybe we're being snowflakey.
I think we're probably being very snowflakey, yeah.
Oh, dear, that'll never do. Did you want to talk cruise ship?
Well, do you remember yesterday, about this time, actually, I was talking about this amazing cruise ship called Icon of the Seas, I think it is. It's a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, and it carries 12,000 people on board. Do you want to have a look at what it looks like? I mean, it is a city on the sea, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
If we take the strap out, we might be able to have a look at it. Yeah, Icon of the Seas there. It's got 20 stories high. And it's got shopping malls and theatre. I mean, it's got everything that a cruise ship would have, only much more so. 7 swimming pools, a fun fair on the top deck. That looks quite good fun. But so many rooms. I mean, look at that.
I don't know why it bothers me, the idea of so many people on one thing.
Look at the size of it. Yeah, me too.
I don't know why,
because like
if you're going to have
too many people.
You're going to have a disaster.
Afloat.
I know it sounds awful, but if you're going to have a disaster, it doesn't matter what size vessel you're on, does it? But
well, I'd still get on board and count the lifeboats, I suppose, wouldn't I? But look at it. It's enormous.
So it's a royal
Is that
Caribbean.
your idea of a holiday? I mean, I like cruising.
You do like cruising?
Not on anything that big. We've been moored alongside ones that are nearly that big, and they are absolutely giants.
I have seen adverts on the telly for cruises and where they say, oh, look, you can go to the gym. They have pictures of people...
Yeah.
No, that's not what I want to do on a holiday.
No.
It's not what I want to do when I'm on holidays, to be fair, but...
Well, absolutely. I mean, it does look spectacular, but, wow.
It must appeal to somebody.
Oh, it will do. Apparently it's sold out. You can't get on this year's sort of stuff of it. Yeah, this season. It's completely sold out. So it just shows, I wonder why cruising has taken off in such a big way.
I don't know. It's always for it was for the rich and famous, wasn't it?
Yes, well, it's become affordable. It's still expensive, but it's become much more affordable. And because it caters for families, it is wonderful if you've got young children, because you never have to worry about feeding them for a start. There's always food, and there's always something for them to do.
Right. Oh, well. If you fancy a bit of that, let us know this morning.
What's your idea of a holiday, I suppose? GBviews at gbnews.com.
Something which will get your attention and might, frankly, it seems a bit nasty in a way, but it might make you smile a little bit. At least it feels like a bit of sensible comeuppance. After weeks of scandal, the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, has said there is need for new leadership at the Post Office. And the outgoing chairman, as a result, has stepped down or been gently pushed.
Well, I think it's a bit of that, isn't it? Government officials say an interim will be appointed shortly and a recruitment process for a new chairman or chairwoman will be launched in due course in accordance with the Governance Code for Public Appointments.
Let's talk to political commentator Suzanne Evans, who joins us now. I mean, this guy's only been in post for about a year, so it's not as if this is essentially his fault. However, it does feel right, doesn't it, to have a clean sweep?
Well, Henry Staunton, the outgoing chairman, might not think so. He's got a long and prestigious career in corporate boardrooms across the country. He's 75 years old. He's worked for ITV, BSkyB, Ladbrokes, the London-listed equipment company Ashtead Group, and he's currently already sits on the board of Standard Bank and the FTSE 100 insurance giant Legal & General. So this is a man who's very well respected in his fields. As I said, has had a whole host of very high-profile jobs. And yet, here we are. He's been ousted from the post office. They say he stepped down by mutual consent, but it is quite clear that the business secretary, Kemi Badenoch, has said that she wants change at the top. And yes, you can understand that. But as I say, it's not really that he's responsible for this, because he didn't come into post until December 22. And of course, as we know, the High Court case which ruled that the Horizon IT system had bugs and that convictions were unsafe was well before that, in 2019.
Yes, I think a lot of the wrongfully accused and, in some cases, imprisoned postmasters and postmistresses will be pleased that at least things are being done, and that and that I think that the criticism of him is that during the year he has been in charge, he's just not achieved anything. It's almost as though the Post Office are still trying to bury their head in the sand over the whole affair.
Well, it's interesting. One of the reports that have come out is that why he's been asked to step down is because apparently he and the government, it said, had a bit of a clash over who should be appointed as a new investigative role of director to the board. Now, it's understood, I think, that Henry Staunton wanted an existing non-executive director of the Post Office board to take that new role, whereas the government wanted a Whitehall insider. But that in itself raises questions, doesn't it? Because the Mail on Sunday did an analysis and it found that there were some 101 government contracts existing with Fujitsu across 40 different government departments, quangos and local councils. So who is closer to this, really? Is it the Whitehall insider or somebody who's already on the Post Office board and has been and seen much more of the whole story? Certainly some MPs are saying that there's been a overtly or too cosy relationship between government and Whitehall and Fujitsu. Lucy Allen, the MP for Telford, just up the road from me here in Shropshire, she's been saying that this relationship is too cosy, that Fujitsu and the government are far too reliant upon each other, and that's part of the reason this scandal was allowed to happen. We know we've had people like the Lib Dem leader Ed Davey has said that he believed what the Post Office and Fujitsu were telling him. We now know wrongly. So there you go. There's this row. Obviously, somebody's heads have had to roll, and it's Henry Staunton's that's gone.
Oh, it's part of the thing when you're in at the top, isn't it? Suzanne, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. I'm sure you've got a view on that.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
I mean, as you said, it's part of it. That's the reason they get paid the big bucks, is because ultimately they carry the can.
I mean, I can understand. I mean, Suzanne, in effect, saying, well, it's not really his fault. None of it's his fault, you know, it seems a little bit unfair. But do you know what? I sort of don't have any sympathy. Maybe that's wrong of me, I don't know. But it's just like, you've been at the top, and as you say, we've heard nothing really from the Post Office in the last year. It has been a bit head in the sand, and maybe it's time just to start again.
You still get the feeling with the Post Office at the moment, because they don't seem to be very open and direct, even in their apologies, which are very few and far between. Yeah. You just don't get the feeling that that they really care still. No. And that's probably maybe why you do need to boot out quite a few people at the top. But who are they going to replace them with? And these cosy relationships that Suzanne was that you get this feeling, don't you, that there's probably an awful lot of cosy relationships that we know nothing about.
Yeah. Well, something has to change dramatically, I think. But anyway,
they're making
a play. With that.
They're making a play of it. You know, obviously the drama, the ITV drama, which has sort of brought it to the fore, really. And there have been documentaries in the past, but the ITV drama is the one that got everybody talking about it. Well, they're turning it into a play already, apparently.
Someone's thinking of coining it in.
Very, very quickly. Well, why not, I suppose.
I suppose. Anyway, should we head to the United States? Donald Trump has returned to the campaign trail overnight, just a day after a jury in New York ordered him to pay £65 million for defaming columnist E. Jean Carroll.
And as the Republican primaries continue to get underway, Donald Trump was sure to take aim at his two biggest rivals, Nikki Haley and Joe Biden.
Everybody, we're beating her by a lot, but we're beating Biden. She can't beat Biden. The polls are showing, the most recent polls, because she doesn't have Republican support. You know what she doesn't have? She doesn't have MAGA. She doesn't have MAGA. There's no MAGA.
There's just no MAGA.
Let's talk to political analyst at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, Ronald Granieri. I mean, look, nothing keeps him down, Ronald.
Apparently not. He is to a certain extent unsinkable. I would say, going back to your earlier conversation, if you don't like things where people are nasty to each other, you probably don't want to spend too much time listening to a Donald Trump campaign speech. He doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about pretty much anybody else except himself. But he is clearly decided that his legal troubles actually tend to help him with his strongest supporters because they present him then as a victim. And he is coming out swinging against Governor Haley and against President Biden.
I mean, there's no doubt he is a brilliant campaigner, isn't he? You know, he always manages to boil it down to a slogan, a phrase that sticks.
Yes, it definitely does. The big question has been, and that goes back to the result back in New Hampshire last week, is he has a very strong grip on the people who already support him. The question is whether these slogans are catching on with anybody who doesn't already support him, which is what, of course, he would need to win the general election. But he has a formula that he is happy to stick to, and he's quite solid at it.
Yeah, it's all about the base, as they say, with Donald Trump.
As they say.
But this is the problem, isn't it? In terms of, he's got that base, but is Biden or the Democrats generally, are they doing enough to keep their base on side?
I mean, that is the question, and it's not very clear, especially because parts of that base are pulling in multiple directions. Right, the war in Gaza doesn't help. With certain aspects of the Democratic base, certain younger leftist supporters of the Democratic Party are generally pro-Palestinian, or at least critical of Israel, and so this is creating a little bit of a problem for Biden. The big thing is one gets the impression that the Biden administration has just been waiting until it's clear that it is just the two of them, and then Biden will probably fall back. You talk about a slogan, Biden's famous slogan, "Do not compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative." And I think he thinks that's going to be enough. It remains to be seen whether it is.
And do we know if Joe Biden is going to run alongside Kamala Harris again, or is he looking for a different running mate? Because I gather that the Biden family and Kamala Harris do not get on at all.
There are all sorts of stories about them not getting along, although it's difficult to imagine him dropping Kamala Harris because of the parts of the base that still support her. He's using her as a surrogate, especially to the more the progressive elements of his own base. So on issues such as abortion, for example, where Biden is much more moderate on these questions, he sent Vice President Harris to Wisconsin to speak at a rally around the time of the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. It's the problem is if you drop your running mate, it looks either churlish or desperate, and I think that Biden is, for one, for better or for worse, right, that he is locked in on this. It's not possible to make any changes.
It's not very exciting, is it, really, when you just have to sort of swing back to your default position? However, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I'll tell you what, I find American politics very odd, frankly. But the idea that every time there's a presidential election, the vote is pretty much 50-50.
It is.
It's just a case of who edges it slightly.
It's been like that for many
forever.
years, hasn't it? Yeah.
So you always end up with half the population who are really
don't like it.
Because it gets so polarised. I don't know how you change that. Whenever there's been a third candidate, they never do very well.
I even heard that apparently the Biden family, particularly, I suppose, the Biden administration, dislike Kamala Harris so much that that's why he's running again, because he doesn't want to hand it to her.
Is that... Do we believe that?
There's a new book out about it, apparently, which I must get into because I like that sort of thing.
Is it written by a Republican?
I wonder.
I mean, this is the thing. I don't know what to believe anymore about any of it. I really don't. And yesterday, of course, we were talking to Roger Gewolb, who was here in the studio, who knows Trump. And what I found particularly interesting was he said a little bit on air, but he was saying more off air, saying who you see there is not Donald Trump.
He's putting on a show.
The whole thing is an act, apparently. Now, is that true? And if it is true, what does that mean? I mean, I don't know. Roger did say next time Trump was in town, I'll take you along to meet him, and then you will assess yourself.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
So
he is somebody you'd want to meet, I think, because he would be so interesting.
I have met him once, very briefly, before he was president.
Yeah, when he was just millionaire Donald Trump.
In Trump Towers, having a drink in Trump Towers, and he walked in and said, hello, hi! And he seemed very nice then, but I mean, it's...
He pops up in movies as well, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
He's in Home Alone.
He's in Home Alone, and there's a few things. I watched
because
the other day he was
such
in.
a huge celebrity, I suppose.
Yeah, anyway.
Astonishing.
Right, let's have a look at what else is happening this morning. And the chief of the UN Agency for Palestinians has said he's shocked by the UK's decision to join 8 other countries in pausing funding to the UNWRA. It follows allegations that some staff may have been involved in the October 7th attacks on Israel. Commissioner General of the UN Works and Relief Agency, Philippe Lazzarini, has spoken out, saying the decision to halt funding threatens our ongoing humanitarian work across the region, especially in the Gaza Strip.
Up to 11,000 staff working for John Lewis and Waitrose could lose their jobs over the next 5 years, as the John Lewis Partnership, which owns the stores, is considering cuts to at least 10% of the workforce. It's thought the measures could affect staff in its head office, in supermarkets and throughout the department stores.
An undercover investigation for the Sunday Times has revealed Britain's top universities are paying intermediaries to recruit overseas students. The Times has revealed overseas students can buy their way onto highly competitive courses with grades as low as a handful of C's.
Of course, overseas students pay
a lot more.
And the universities need their money.
Yeah. I don't know if it's that shocking.
I'm not sure it's that shocking.
No, I'm not really surprised.
Always been the case.
Well, universities are forever sending people, and they have like sort of little outreach centres in China and Hong Kong, and they're always sending people out there. So
they're always trying to recruit overseas students because they pay.
They pay about 5 times as much as we do.
Certainly do.
So there you go.
I'll tell you what, though, it's very nearly 20 minutes past 6. January might be known for budget blues as we continue to pay off expenses from Christmas, but apparently it does not have to be that way.
Yes, to help us budget better, charity Christians Against Poverty have launched a new online campaign with the aim of helping people improve their financial situation.
Our reporter Anna Riley tells you this story.
Mum of 4, Marie Bloom, was in thousands of pounds of debt that had built up over years. Her universal credit payments didn't cover her bills, and the cost of living crisis brought bailiffs to her door.
Basically, all the main bills, council tax, gas, electric, water, all the most important bills were the ones that were getting neglected because I had to feed the children first. I had all the bills ready that were going out that I were in debt with. And I had taken out loans to help me cover things like school uniforms and things that I wouldn't have had money for. I was literally making myself ill. Do you know what I mean? I would actually poorly with worry.
Marie turned to money coaching charity Christians Against Poverty, and with their help, she's recently become debt-free.
Honestly, like a ton of bricks has been lifted off me. It's like amazing. Because I've literally suffered for years and years on my own about the debt and not telling anybody and trying to hide it from people. And it was difficult knowing that I was going to bed every night, knowing that I was getting in more and more debt, and that I couldn't afford things for my children. I survived on the little bit of money that we had. And I made sure that kids had food on the table and clothes on their back and a roof over their head. But that, you know, I struggled to death every day to do that.
Helen Bolton helped Marie with her finances. And over the last year, the money coach has seen a sharp rise in people asking for assistance.
The cost of living has really tipped a lot of people over the edge with things like their gas, their electric, their water. So, I've been doing the job on and off for about 10 years. And I used to see lots of loans and catalogues and, you know, debt that had arisen perhaps because people were spending on the nice to have kind of things. What I found in the last 12 months or more is that more and more of the clients are coming to us where the problem is that they just can't pay the household bills.
Christians Against Poverty are now also providing free money help online, along with their face-to-face money coaching service.
Money worries are just rubbish. You know, it's stress, it's anxiety. Often it's not being able to enjoy life or pay the basics, and hey, no one wants to be in that position. So we are encouraging people to get a budget and beat those New Year blues. And over the next couple of months, there is a budget planner available that people can actually use to a bit of a template, some basic instructions to get their finances organised and feel like they're starting the year off on the right track.
It's hoped the campaign will help people swap their winter financial worries for budgeting success. Anna Riley, GB News.
I think that's absolutely brilliant because one of the things about debt, particularly, I think, is that it panics you.
Well, it
You go into a
destroys
blind
everything.
panic because you can't cope.
You just can't think straight.
Yeah, exactly. And you get upset, and that's no way to deal with debt. And then somebody who's completely objective and knows how to work these things out comes in, and it's incredible that they can sort you out.
Because they're just looking at it from almost a sort of cold perspective, right? You need to do X, Y and Z. Well, let's talk to Chief Economic Advisor for the Centre of Economic and Business Research, Vicky Price, who joins us now. And I think this is fascinating, Vicky, because I said we mustn't forget how crippling debt can be, and the idea of an outside advisor just helping people out is crucial, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, of course, is that we've seen a very substantial drop in real disposable incomes, and people have a lot less to spend. And we've seen prices go up, but also taxes go up. So those who are in jobs are now just about beginning to see increases which are in real terms positive, which is something, at least. And until now, of course, they were not getting enough to compensate for the rise in inflation we had seen. Well, now things are improving a little bit, but it has left loads of people with huge amount of debt, particularly those who had borrowed at the times when interest rates were low and now find themselves having to pay an awful lot more than was the case before. So yes, budgeting is good for you generally, but of course there is an assumption that some money comes in and you're able to control it. In reality, quite a lot of people have fallen into poverty in such a way that there isn't an awful lot they can do.
I mean, you obviously understand money, but I think, do you get the feeling that most of us in Britain don't? We're not very good at understanding money, and we should address that somehow, shouldn't we? Should we be teaching money things and budgeting and things like that in school?
It's been suggested a number of times, and I think there is a beginning trend, which is that, yes, of course, people should understand what money actually means and how it's created, you know, how you earn it. But it's also interesting that one of the suggestions for this charity initiative that is taking place is that you've also got to look at, you know, what you do with your job. I mean, the interesting thing is that there are jobs around that perhaps earn you a little bit more, and you don't know that that is the case. So finding out, one of the 5 steps, if you like, is have a look and see what you can in fact do, which is, of course, you know, going back to schools, are careers advisors telling you what you should be doing, what you should be aiming for, where perhaps the sectors are where you can earn a little bit more than would be the case otherwise, what types of subjects you should study, which might actually give you a little bit more in the long term in terms of what you get through your life. So all those things are very, very important from an early stage. And you're absolutely right. What happens at schools is very, very important for your whole life earnings trajectory that you have.
OK, Vicky, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. We need to talk about it a lot more, I think. And I do think it's vitally important for anyone who is in debt. And if you're watching this morning and you are in debt, and it's probably the first thing that you think about in a morning, get help. Ask for help. whether you've there's CAP there is worth looking at online, or
online
Citizens
help.
Advice, or
Yeah.
there's a few charities out there.
But it is terrifying feeling that you're in debt and not knowing how to get out of it.
No, horrible.
It is terrifying. If you've got any experience of that, do get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.com.
OK, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. It's Craig.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Looking ahead to today, most of us should see some sunshine at times, and for all, it will be feeling very mild. So we start the day actually with a touch of frost in the east, but here we'll see bright skies from the word go. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around and maybe the odd spit and spot of rain, but most of this cloud will tend to break up a little bit as we go into the afternoon, allowing some spells of sunshine. But up towards parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, we will see this band of rain move in during the afternoon, and that will be accompanied by some very strong winds. But with the winds coming in from the south, it's going to be a very mild day. Actually, some parts of northern Wales could see highs reaching 16 to 17 degrees. Into the evening, the rain just slowly moves its way southeastwards across parts of Scotland, eventually moving into northern England and the far north of Wales later on in the night. But to the south of it, it remains mild but rather cloudy. Could just see a touch of frost as the rain clears up across the far north of Scotland. So Monday morning, we start off rather grey but mild in the south. This rain actually becomes quite slow moving across parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So quite a grey, wet day to come here. But to the north of it, actually, it does start to cheer up and we will see some spells of sunshine, but also some blustery showers. Temperatures in the north cooler than on Sunday, but still mild in the south.
Now, do you have a superstition? Are you superstitious
No.
anyway?
No,
No, nor me. But lots of sports stars are. So, for instance, what does Aryna Sabalenka, the new ladies champion from the Australian Open...
Oh, she won,
What does she... Yeah, she won.
Oh,
yeah. What does she do to her coach's head before she plays a game? We'll find out in a few minutes.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
6:30, good morning. This is Breakfast on GB News. Let's just remind you of the top stories today.
After weeks of scandal, the chairman of the Post Office has now resigned as new leadership is tasked with restoring faith in the beleaguered institution.
Just a day after being ordered to pay £65 million to E. Jean Carroll for defamation, Donald Trump has returned to the campaign trail in Nevada, taking aim at Nikki Haley, his Republican rival, and President Joe Biden.
And don't let the budget blues get you down. A new campaign is being launched today to help Britons improve their finances in 2024. Tell you what, thinking of debt and the sort of terrible effect it can have on you, doesn't seem to have stopped Donald Trump. I mean, he's £65 million down now, still fighting ahead in the primaries.
I don't know how much money he's got, though.
I don't
You can never quite work it out. No one seems to know.
I think it's sort of liquid, isn't it? Or, it's buried deep in buildings and assets and things like
Might
that.
be cash rich.
Well,
comparatively. He's probably got 65
he could
million.
melt down those golden doors on Trump Tower, couldn't he?
He's got a golden toilet, hasn't he?
Something, yeah, I think so.
Yes. Oh, just.
I mean,
just
isn't
bear
that
up.
ridiculous, thinking I'm so rich, I'm going to have a golden toilet?
People do
Wouldn't
it.
be high on my list of priorities, would it?
It'd be a bit cold to sit on.
Yeah.
You'd have to get one of those furry seats.
Oh, that would look really... Well, I imagine a gold toilet doesn't look terribly good either, so... Why are
Anyway,
we
enough of
talking
that.
about that?
I know Aidan McGee's here. Morning.
Morning to you both.
Can we talk FA Cup to begin with?
Without doubt, Maidstone United yesterday, they are 3 divisions below Football League. They pulled off one of the great FA Cup upsets yesterday.
Ooh.
So they went to Ipswich Town. They took 4,500 fans there. Maidstone's not a small place. It's quite a big place. They don't have much footballing heritage. They did have a Football League... Well, they were a Football League club about 30 years ago. I used to go and watch them, actually. They lived around the corner. They were based around the corner from my nan, because they used to play... They were so skint, they used to play in Dartford.
All right.
And so they haven't had any form since then at all. They've not been on the map until yesterday. They go to Ipswich Town. Ipswich Town are doing very well this season. They're second in the Championship. They could easily be in the Premier League. They're as good as they've been in 20 years. And Maidstone United, talk about taking your chances, Stephen. Maidstone United had 2 shots on goal, scored 2 goals. Ipswich had 38, 13 on target, only managed one. Only managed one. It's one of those days, when you go, you need things to be running your favour if you're going to get a result like this. Ipswich hit the post 3 or 4 times. The goalkeeper for Maidstone was absolutely fantastic. Everything went in their favour, and what a performance. They're managed by a guy called George Ellacobi, who had a very stellar Premier League career with Wolverhampton Wanderers. And, I mentioned the 4,500 people who went. I sit here sometimes saying, is this a big priority for big clubs, the FA Cup? Yes, it's full of tradition, but try telling those fans yesterday it didn't matter to them. They had a massive party in Maidstone last night, I can tell you that. And just to put it in context, no team as low down as this has reached the 5th round of the FA Cup since 1978. Blythe Spartans managed it, and they'll be in the draw on Monday night. They were the second. City went through on Friday, and so Maidstone United joined them. And there'll be the draw. The draw will be on Monday night. They'll be hoping for a plum tie, won't they?
Oh, good on them.
Yeah.
Good on them. I like a giant killer.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see it that often. I mean, but this is really low. This is one of the great ones. And I mean, there were people talking about it at the station yesterday. People heading back to Kent. I've heard that. I'll be honest. I interrupted the conversation when I overheard someone on the tube saying, "I've heard Maidstone United win it at Ipswich." I said, "Yeah, I've had it confirmed." Then we all lost signal.
Oh, well, there you go. It's Tinternet for you.
What's Jurgen Klopp up to today?
So they're playing Norwich City today. So this is the first game since he announced he'll be stepping down at the end of the season. That's 2:30. And then Man United face Newport County in Wales at 4:30. Bit of controversy overnight. Marcus Rashford was pictured in a Belfast nightclub on Wednesday. It's since emerged that he was also there on Thursday. Now, the subplot to this, Anne, is that he told his manager on Friday, when they were due to train, that he wasn't well.
So I assume...
So I assume he's not going to be in contention today, but it's a sign that his life, his career is... It's not what it was maybe a year or two ago, because it's not the first time.
Boy, wasn't he?
He was indeed, yeah. He had the school dinners, he was playing. I mean, he scored 30-odd goals last season. Absolutely outstanding. He was really good for England at the World Cup as well. But I wonder whether Gareth Southgate has a decision to make, because this summer the Euros are coming up. He needs to find some form quickly, and this won't have done him any favours. He has a friend who plays for Larne in Northern Ireland. He went over to see him in a private jet. They had 2 nights out in a row in a nightclub. These days, you just can't do that. People have got camera phones.
Well, that's it. You'll get found out, won't you?
Don't get no such thing as privacy. No such thing. When you're that famous, you're one of the most famous people in Europe in football terms, and you go out and do that. I mean, it's a sign that, to me, it's someone who has given up on his Manchester United career.
I'll tell you what, he probably needs taking down a peg or two, and I don't mean that nastily. I mean, to safeguard him.
Probably, yeah. He's still young, and
this is a problem with these footballers. They're very young with buckets of money.
They are, and they have to grow up
We'd all go mad, wouldn't we?
You would. I know. Yes. People forget how the age thing is very important. People forget how how young they are when they have to grow up in public.
But that's why you need a good manager, isn't it? Somebody who
you do,
keep the
and
team in line.
he's a disciplinarian, and he won't tolerate.
But he
much
cares more
of
about
this.
the team than the individual staff.
Well, he does. I mean, you have to do a bit of both, actually. The top managers have to. You realise that some players need specific management. He is probably the most famous player in that squad, just because his fame transcends the sport for the reasons Stephen mentioned just then. But when you're saying you're ill, yes, he's probably right, as you said.
He is ill.
Then that doesn't look good at all.
Well, I was ill, Gov. I was. Tell us about Arina Sabalenka.
Oh, fantastic.
She did brilliantly yesterday, didn't she?
Well, she just swatted away her opponent in 2 sets, 6-2, 6-3. But she has this superstitions. Now, she's been claiming that the keeping it fun before matches, which she doesn't tend to do. She was guilty of taking things a bit too seriously. With the prizes at stake, it's understandable. But she signs her fitness trainer, Jason Stacey's head before every game.
She signs his head?
Yeah, and
he sits there and watches
Jason
it. Statham, then.
No, he looks a bit like Jason Statham.
Yeah, let's if we can get that picture up again of her actually... I thought she's patting him on the head, but she's not. She's actually signing her name on his head.
Yeah, so he sits there. I mean, I'd amazed if the ink doesn't run in that heat.
Yeah.
Oh.
But she insists on doing that.
She insists on doing that. And a great performance yesterday. I mean, ruthless in the final. She retained it, became the first player to retain that tournament. It's so tough to win it down there. You know the conditions down there. And she did it for the first time in 10 years. Someone actually retained the tournament.
But today we've got Sinner, Medvedev.
Absolutely, yeah. Good final there. The final we haven't seen before. Medvedev's been to a few before. He won the US Open in 2021. He's been in 2 finals in Australia. Hasn't won them so far. Today could be the day for him. But Yannick Sinner, as you mentioned yesterday, the former skier. Is his career going to be going downhill from here? Hopefully for him. But 8:30.
He's 22.
I know he is, yeah.
Isn't he? So if he does that, I mean, he'd be the next big star.
And I'll tell you, you've been waiting for a while in the men's game for a cluster of players to come up and just fill that void below Murray, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. Maybe we're just seeing the beginnings of that now. And we're seeing 2 different names in the final today, and it'd be great. It's 8:30 start as well in Melbourne.
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll play full 5 sets, and I might get to see the last set or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing with the women's game. They play
it's over too quickly.
I know it is. I think it should be a best of 5 sets. They're imperious athletes. They should be able to do that length of time on a court.
Oh well,
I've said it.
Yeah,
there you go.
You said
it. Why not? Aidan, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Do stay with us. It's 6:38, very nearly 6:39. We're going to be looking at the newspapers in just a couple of moments. You're watching Breakfast on GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
6:41. Let's have a look at the newspapers for you this morning. We'll start with the Sunday Telegraph. It has UK warships lacking the necessary equipment to strike Houthi targets.
The Observer leads with the UK granting refugee status to 4 Rwandans over fears of persecution back home.
The Sunday Times has top UK universities' preferential treatment of wealthy foreign students.
And the Sunday Mirror reports on the Conservatives being accused of manipulating election rules.
The Sunday Express has Richy Sunx targeting the votes of over 50s to try to win the next election.
Well, joining us to go through what is making the news is Deputy Editor of Spite, Fraser Myers, and author and journalist Susan Holder. And welcome to you both.
Good morning.
Right, we're starting with you, Fraser, then, aren't we? Looking at the way universities are recruiting foreign students.
Yeah, so this is absolutely scandalous. It seems as if, universities have, entry-level grades. You have to get A stars or 3 A's and things like that. That's what they advertise to British students. But it turns out that they're using, essentially, recruiting firms to lure in foreign students who are allowed to pay a lot more. They don't have their tuition fees capped. And they're being offered places with much lower grades, so C's, D's. The University of Leeds, which I think you need 3 A's to get in as a British student, you can go in with a D, a single D at A level, if you're a foreign student paying international fees.
That's because you've got more money to pay.
It's because you've got more money. And so this is, the ongoing tragedy of higher education, where it's been turned essentially into a consumer product, which inevitably brings down standards and, it corrodes the institution from within, sadly. And I think, we've seen this in a lot of ways where it's become a problem where students are basically customers. And I think that actually plays a role in some of the sort of woke stuff that's going on campus, safe spaces. It's part of the sort of problem where students feel that they're not, they are there to be pandered to rather than, there to work hard, there to get on.
Yes, that's interesting. I'd never thought of it like that, but I sort of agree.
Well, I think that the problem we've got is that too many people are going and too many people have an expectation. And I do kind of blame the education system for that and teachers who are in a mindset with young people that they have to go to university. And it just is it's a tick box for a school to get as many people as possible in, because then, job done, off they go. And actually, it's not the way. And I've worked with young people a lot. I didn't go to university. I went to journalism college to study journalism because I knew what I wanted to do. And there's an awful lot of, I don't know what I want to do, so I'll go to university for a few years. And it is a rite of passage, and that work, and I do understand that. And I told my son all the way through his childhood, you don't have to go to, you don't. In the end, he did go to a university, but he did a vocational sound engineering course, which I thought, it wasn't 4 years of geography. And there's nothing wrong with 4 years of geography if you know what you're going to do at the end of it, or if that's what you need. But I do think there's an awful lot of degrees that nowadays do not equip you for a job, are not necessary. And it's not true that you get a better job because you've gone to university. It's not true anymore.
No.
So we need to kind of break that cycle. And
well,
we
there's
need
apprenticeships.
Apprenticeships.
Universities for years, governments for years have been saying, oh, yes, we're going to really push apprenticeships.
And then they never do. Because it's, have you been to university? I mean, you can still get that prejudice of no, I didn't go to university. I went to a college in Cardiff and I loved it.
I'd have known
I did.
That's where I went.
Did you go to the South Glamorgan Institute of Higher Education?
Absolutely.
That's where I went.
Yeah. I was on a block release, what we call. So I was working for a newspaper and then they'd say...
I didn't do the block release. I did the NCTJ as a 2-year thing, but that's exactly where I went. But yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Did you go to university, Fraser?
I did.
Well, thank heaven.
At least someone's educated.
2 of us here.
What did you study?
Did you get a grant and did we pay for you?
You did, but I didn't. I mean, I did have to pay tuition fees, but not the 9 grand that students have today. But yeah, you did also get a lot more taxpayer-funded help than you do today. So yeah, there's many ways in which the sort of developments in higher education are quite sad. I think, probably it would be better if fewer people went, but if it were more rigorous, if that makes sense, and if you had better support for, working class people to be able to go. I think that's crucial. But
it's Tony Blair, isn't it, who said everybody should go to university?
When he's wrong.
And he was wrong.
But I do think as well that the funding, we do need those foreign students coming in with the kind of, that is what kind of funds a lot of the university courses that people here can go on. So I don't think it's just that we should stop that, and it needs looking at perhaps, but the biggest problem I think is that too many people are just going.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily.
I would tend to agree. Susan.
Yes.
Richy Sunx. gone full throttle, according to the Sunday Express.
Well, this will be good news for you because you've got a birthday coming up, haven't you?
Oh, great!
and his mission is to improve the lives of over 50s.
Oh.
Come and join our club.
That's actually, whereas I've not been bothered about turning 50, that makes it sound really depressing.
Oh, it's going to be
now the older generation.
Well, this is what I'm kind of upset with the way that they've been covering this because I've never seen myself as the saga generation, but no. And I don't intend to start, to be quite honest. But so what he's talking about is he obviously trying to get votes. His mission is to improve the life of over 50s. Well, that sounds lovely.
How's he going to do it?
How's he going to do that? He's going to unlock new job opportunities, boost healthcare, which probably will be quite good news for everybody, and help with personal finances to put money back into people's pockets. That
all sounds a bit vague.
Doesn't it always? But he's also... It comes as new figures are revealed that there's a 29% rise in the number of over 50s buying their first home. There are now...
Wow.
An increase in people. That is how long it's taking some people to get on the property ladder. That definitely does need looking at, doesn't it? That's not good news. But also, by the time you're in that generation, you are also trying to help your children get their leg up, because nowadays no one can do it without somebody above them kind of giving them a bit of help, which we didn't have back in the day. Couldn't have had. Nobody's ever helped me with a kind of like handout to do anything like that. But
you would never have
how.
thought of it, actually.
You would never
have thought of going to your parents and saying,
you wouldn't.
Can you help me with the deposit for
Absolutely
a house?
Not. No. Absolutely not.
But now it's the norm.
It's the norm, and it would be impossible to get on the housing ladder without that kind of help. And I think maybe that's where this, sort of predicament comes from for the Tories, because the gap, between younger and older voters is extraordinary. It's only pensioners where the Conservatives are outpolling Labour. And if you look at sort of slightly younger cohorts, Labour are winning by 60 points, which is just absolutely insane. But then you're thinking, well, what are the things that make people want to vote Conservative? It's probably owning your own home is the key thing. What have they done to boost home ownership? Not very much. Not building new houses.
Yeah.
The house prices are only going up far faster than the rate of pay.
So it's just all out of anyone's control, though. We can't build our way out of this. I mean, this is just it's the market economy, actually, that houses have become so expensive compared to wages now, and I don't know how you begin to combat that.
And also, it's maybe a level of expectation of what people expect to have as their first home. Whereas, I mean, the Victorians, we're still living in all those terraced houses the Victorians built that actually were well-built houses that have lasted and were terraces and took up a kind of a minimum amount of space and were good for city living. And why don't we have schemes like that anymore? If they could do it, why don't we? But we don't. We build these weird little kind of boxy homes that are detached, so people can say they live in a detached house on an estate. But actually, that's not the best use of space and maybe not the best way to kind of think about having your first home.
And also, they're outrageously expensive.
And they're outrageously
boxes,
expensive. And they don't have the kind of community around them and facilities that you need if you're living in a home, which people don't think of. There's no point just kind of having a site where you build an estate if there's no local school or local shops or local infrastructure or medical centre. You need all that kind of thing.
Oh, that would involve sensible...
Yes, it would involve that.
There you go.
Very true.
Fraser, let's look at the Telegraph, Sunday Telegraph. With the Post Office chairman being sacked or resigned, whichever,
he's been sacked, really. He's been told by Kemi Badenoch he's got to step down. I mean, it's interesting. He was only hired in 2022, I think. So he's not responsible for the Horizon scandal. But certainly, I think, the past couple of weeks has been a PR disaster for the Post Office. They haven't ingratiated themselves very well with the public. I mean,
they haven't really said sorry.
Exactly. I mean, I know it would be a difficult job for anyone, and especially if it's not this guy's fault. But I don't think they've done anything to improve their reputation whatsoever.
Is it right that we need a clean broom, as it were, to clear it out and start again?
I think so. I mean, it's it feels like it's so rotten, and you read stories as well. Have been coming out in the past week or so, and there are many people involved in these ludicrous prosecutions that don't have any regrets and things like that, and think that they did the right thing. Clearly there's a huge amount of rot in this institution.
But the guy who's gone, Henry Staunton, actually though was dragging his feet apparently over how quickly to do compensation. So that's the kind of reason.
Really?
That's the reason that they're giving for why he's been moved on. Although
why
but clearly there are people way back in the process that need looking at, not least, of course, Paula Venables. But I found an article further in the Telegraph. There's actually another even more worrying thing where the post office staff apparently are quitting their jobs in large numbers because of this. They just don't want to be associated. They don't feel comfortable working. There's somebody who runs a post office in rural Cumbria has said he's shut down. I can't be in league with the devil. And so he's shutting his post office and giving up, and there's somebody else in Devon.
And you can understand that. It's a very tainted brand now. I mean, they clearly aren't sorry for what they did because they're just not saying so and they're not doing enough. And it's always been said that what they were trying to do, and that's why maybe they still feel they did the right thing, was to protect the brand. And the brand is
well done.
So tainted now.
It is.
You can understand people saying, I don't want to say I work for the post office.
But it can't be damaged irrevocably because we need those post office. The post office is such a community hub, such a necessary thing for so many people.
They're going to have to rebrand it, call it something else.
Yes, maybe. But
well, I wonder if it's another company will come in.
Yeah.
And do something different, which I know is a bit of a frightening prospect in a way because the post office was trusted.
Well, no one can get it as bad, surely.
Well,
I mean, you're going from a kind of a very low level. You can only kind of improve things, actually. If anyone's thinking about taking over the post office, I mean, you haven't got to do too good a job to kind of look great.
But as you say, you know, it provides so many services, especially to places that are, you know, not well served, not big towns and cities. So, and often those things are not actually profitable. So you think, who would take it over?
Well, it's always part of something else in our village. It's in the co-op, which is actually good because any time the co-op's open, so is the post office. So actually you get better service sometimes by kind of bridging it with other
mine,
things.
it's in the off licence.
Oh, is it? That's handy.
That's handy. I mean, it used to be in the village where I grew up. When we had one there, it was in the pub.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh,
cool.
Grandma used to like going for a pension.
That's
Sherry while she's in there.
It's a very important part of the community.
It is.
Because I'll never forget, there's one line in the ITV drama where the sub-postmistress has been forcibly, her post office has been forcibly closed on her. And she said, who's going to look after my old ladies?
Yeah, she was the one who was keeping the passport because she'd obviously got a little bit of problem, maybe a dementia situation or something.
That's right.
And every time she wanted to come in, she never remembered her passport. So the postmistress, who was so trusted by the community, kept that lady's
in the drawer
for her, so it would always be there when she needed it. It's that kind of thing. You can't buy that kind of thing. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Let's go cruising, should we? Because Anne loves. Well, I was going to say you love this story. I don't know. You're not convinced by the size of the ship, the icon of the sea.
It's this new enormous.
I can't believe the size of it. Yes, so it's got 20 decks, and it can take up to 7,600 passengers.
Oh, I thought it was more than that.
That's what I found.
It's called the Icon of the Seas.
The Icon of the Seas, and it sets sail on its maiden voyage from Miami, Florida. Now, it's a city on water, isn't it, really, if that's what you're looking for? I don't know. Is it much of a getaway if you've got that many people with you and there's so much going on? And I don't know that you'd feel that you were on holiday.
No, I'm not sure I would.
I suppose you go for the weather more than anything, and for the fact that everything is laid on, isn't it?
Well, it must be.
There's so much for the kids to do. There's so many places to go to eat.
You see, Susan's been in touch. Morning, Susan. Says, Icon of the Seas looks like my idea of hell.
I can kind of understand that.
Yeah.
There's somebody. I'm kind of in two minds about cruise. I do think it's a very good way to get around a lot of places to see, so you don't just go to one location. But on the other hand, I don't like the idea of being trapped on a boat with lots of other people, but also the regimented nature that you have to kind of have, where you're told, well, this is what time we do this and this is what time we do that. Again, for me, that's not a holiday. I'm a bit more. I like a bit more free and easy.
Do you know they've even got an ice skating rink?
Well, of course they have. I mean, look at the size of it. I would think they've got. I would think they've got a ski slope somewhere.
Yeah, probably have. Yeah, no, to me it's a little bit too big.
Yeah,
just a little.
Chris says it sounds like Butlins on the water.
See,
not necessarily. You can go posh. They can be quite posh.
But it's all those announcements over the tannoy. It is.
Heidi High.
It is. Bing bong.
Right, we're out of time. Thank you for that note. Susan Fraser, thank you. Here's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Looking ahead to today, most of us should see some sunshine at times, and for all, it will be feeling very mild. So we start the day actually with a touch of frost in the east, but here we'll see bright skies from the word go. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around and maybe the odd spit and spot of rain, but most of this cloud will tend to break up a little bit as we go into the afternoon, allowing some spells of sunshine. But up towards parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, we will see this band of rain move in during the afternoon, and that will be accompanied by some very strong winds. But with the winds coming in from the south, it's going to be a very mild day. Actually, some parts of northern Wales could see highs reaching 16 to 17 degrees. Into the evening, the rain just slowly moves its way southeastwards across parts of Scotland, eventually moving into northern England and the far north of Wales later on in the night. But to the south of it, it remains mild but rather cloudy. Could just see a touch of frost as the rain clears up across the far north of Scotland. So Monday morning, we start off rather grey but mild in the south. This rain actually becomes quite slow moving across parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So quite a grey, wet day to come here. But to the north of it, actually, it does start to cheer up and we will see some spells of sunshine, but also some blustery showers. Temperatures in the north cooler than on Sunday, but still mild in the south.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 28th of January. Today, after weeks of pressure over the post office scandal, the chairman has now resigned, or perhaps been pushed, as new leadership is tasked with restoring faith in the beleaguered institution.
King Charles is spending his third day in hospital, recovering from prostate surgery, and Queen Camilla is reassuring us that he is doing well.
Supermarkets have turned to facial recognition in a bid to combat rising crime, but is that a risk to our privacy? We'll debate that later on.
And don't let January's budget blues get you down. A new campaign is being launched today to help Britons improve their finances at the beginning of this year.
Aidan's got the very latest on the sport this morning.
Yes, indeed. Good morning. Maidstone United added another chapter of FA Cup folklore to the tournament by beating Ipswich at Portman Road yesterday. 4,500 fans were there to see it in the away end, and we'll be updating you in the cricket of England's progress in India. They made a real stand of it in Hyderabad.
And Craig Snell will have your weather forecast this morning.
Good morning. It's going to be a mild day for all of us out there, but we will see the return of some wind and rain. Find out where in a little bit.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Heck, you're not a bunch of cruising fans. I have to tell you, Anne is looking at the price list now.
I was just interested to see how much
Is
it
it
costs.
expensive?
Well, it depends what sort of room you want.
Oh.
And by the sound of it, you can get... This is Icon of the Seas, this enormous cruise ship,
Massive one.
which has just started its maiden voyage. And it's going around the Caribbean by the look of it. And there it is. And it's enormous. It carries up to 10,000 people, 7,500 guests.
And the rest is
The rest is staff, yeah.
Wow.
It does look fabulous, but... I mean, we're seeing it here. These are the sort of publicity pictures where it's not too crowded. But can you imagine with 7,500 people?
Is
It's
Jane
going to be
McDonald on
crowded.
it?
I'm sure she is.
Because, you
Somewhere.
know, you can't have a decent cruise ship without Jane McDonald.
Right, absolutely.
Just saying.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't make up my mind. I like cruising on much smaller ships. That one is just like it is a floating city.
Yeah, it's bigger than my hometown.
Is it?
10,000 people.
That just shows, doesn't it?
So...
Yeah, no, and a lot of people are saying it's their idea of a nightmare. I'm sure it's lovely when you're on and there are beautiful restaurants and places where you can get away from others, but...
yeah, a bit too much. But, you know, whatever floats your boat.
Expensive. Well, exactly, as long as it does.
There you go.
Yeah.
I saw, you see, look at that, $3,000 for something.
$3,000, and that's the starting price for 1 week. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The great thing about cruising usually, though, is once you're on, everything is included.
Right.
So you're not having to think about can you afford the restaurant tonight or anything, because it's usually completely included.
It's a lot of money.
It is.
Anyway, any thoughts on what is an excellent holiday? Let us know what you would rather do.
Perfect holiday.
We like getting away to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Sort of thing, and then you go for walks and all that sort of thing. So...
No, I like being on the cruise.
Anyway, let's have a look at our top story this morning. And after weeks of scandal, the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, has said there is need for new leadership at the Post Office. And as a result of that, the chairman has stepped down.
Now, government officials say an interim will be appointed shortly and a recruitment process for a new chair will be launched in due course, in accordance with the governance code for public appointments.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Morning, Catherine. What's going on here in the sense that this guy's only been in post for a year, so this scandal is not his fault, but clearly he doesn't have the confidence of the Secretary of State.
No, I think basically he has had the misfortune, shall we say, to be in the top job at the time that Mr Bates and the Post Office, that ITV drama, finally shone a real light on this scandal that has been going on, frankly, for decades. For decades. So he was only in the role since December 22, Henry Stanton, and yesterday the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, rang him up. Now, they're saying he's going by mutual agreement, but the Post Office said, the Post Office was informed the Business and Trade Secretary had asked Henry Stanton to stand down. So I think, really, he was sacked. He was sacked, wasn't he? Kemi Badenoch saying because the heightened level of scrutiny, there had also been apparently some disagreements about mistaken bonuses that had been paid, a row over a director, current stuff.
And that did happen under his leadership,
Yes, that did happen under his leadership. But I think overall, it's sending a message, isn't it, that the government, this government, successive governments, this started under Tony Blair. They knew the Horizon system, which is still, by the way, operating in post offices now. They knew it was faulty before they put it in, but they didn't have anything better. They put it in anyway. Many people have known of the faults for decades. These hundreds of innocent people were literally hung out to dry. 4 took their own lives. They've had their lives ruined. Many of them, most of them, still haven't had compensation. So many people knew. It was ignored and ignored and ignored. So I think now
It's about sending a message, sending a signal that the government is doing something. Of course, hundreds of people still waiting for compensation. The Horizon system still in operation. Fujitsu still has huge government contracts. And also in this piece today, in the Telegraph I was just reading, some post office staff are actually quitting because of it. One of them said, I can't be in a deal with the devil. They feel so horrified by what has gone on that they want nothing to do with the post office. And also, sorry, I'll finish my rant now. Some customers deciding to boycott the post office, which of course is not helpful to all the people that are working there and doing.
I mean, I just don't think if you say the Horizon system is still operating, it's still in use. Look, I get that it is difficult to transfer one system to another. I get it's difficult for the government to operate without the Fujitsu systems it's already got in place, because you can't just rip them out. You've got to put something else in. But how can you have any confidence working in a post office if you're dealing every day with Horizon?
And apparently it is giving people problems still.
I mean, you're going to dread every time you input anything, aren't you?
I mean, presumably most of the bugs have been fixed, but
not according to some postmasters and mistresses elsewhere in the country. They're saying they still have real problems with it all the time. And it must be very frightening, as you said, thinking, am I going to be accused of something?
Yeah, and the thing is that because there are not many companies in the world that can supply this sort of tech, the government hasn't had many options. But when you consider that people in the post office, people in Fujitsu knew really from the very beginning, certainly people in Fujitsu knew from the very beginning. There was a whistleblower said, we knew it was a bag of something I can't say on breakfast TV, but it was put in anyway. So, who knew what in the post office? Clearly, there was a culture of denial. There was a culture of protecting the brand. But my goodness, that's backfired so much, hasn't it now?
They couldn't have done a worse job, could they, protecting the brand? But also, it's not just sort of negligence, is it? They aggressively, almost out of spite, went after people and yet they knew there was a problem with the system.
Yes, and actually we know now too that bonuses were being paid for prosecutions. These were their own people. And what did they think? All these hundreds of sub-postmasters had suddenly become criminal. These are the pillars of society, the people that do these jobs. They serve the community. But, this is not, unfortunately, an isolated incident in terms of massive failures by big organisations and governments, because look at the infected blood scandal. That goes back 50 years. Those people still waiting for compensation. We see it again and again. Hillsborough too, Grenfell, these huge failures where innocent people have been horrendously wronged.
And why is that? Why does it take so long, or maybe in some cases never happen, for compensation, for proper inquiries? Is it bad leadership in number 10? Whose fault is it? Or is it because there are these cosy relationships between government and who the government gives contracts to?
Do you know what? I think it's partly our fault.
What? We're not...
Our fault.
We're not
because,
subjecting them to enough scrutiny?
No. I don't mean us as journalists. I mean us as members of the public. Because we knew about what was going on, for example, with the post office. We've all read stories in it and reported on the odd bits and bobs here. Did we ever pay it a lot of attention? Did we ever think, is this really that bad? Not until that drama.
No.
It's taken that drama for us all to go, oh, hold on. So we as members of society have not done enough.
So without that drama, would Kemi Badenoch have fired this chairman?
No.
Probably not.
We'll never know. Probably not. But as you say, it's because that drama brought the real human cost home. And yet we have read these stories for years and years. But because it was a little bit technical, a little bit dry, a little bit complicated...
We've just let it go.
But, the government and these organisations have a duty, don't they, to act honestly, to act transparently. I don't think we should be letting them off the hook. But also, obviously it's corporate image, it's coziness, cosy relationships. It's the glacial pace at which often anything happens in Whitehall. And it's money, because let's face it, this probably going to cost $1 billion taxpayers' money. Fujitsu ultimately it sounds like may pay it back. But in the case of the tainted blood, that could be about £20 billion that the government is going to have to find. And they've pushed it along, letting another government, somebody else, foot the bill. And meanwhile, in that case, people are dying. Still a couple of people are dying of that every week.
Yeah, it's not good enough, and we let them do it.
But who would you trust to sort it out?
Well, you've got to put your foot down and say, this has got to be done now. And I think we're guilty. We owe everybody an apology, I think, for not pushing on these things hard enough. Catherine, thank you. It's a lesson to us all, I think.
But it's an interesting question, is who would you trust to sort it out?
Don't know.
No.
Don't know. Anyway.
Shall we move on?
Yes, we better head to royal matters.
Yes, the King is facing his third day in hospital today after undergoing surgery on his prostate.
Yeah, the Queen arrived at the London Clinic in central London yesterday. She was there for about 3 hours. It's her third visit to her husband during his stay. Well, she's gone every day.
Quite right, too.
As you would.
Yes. It's the same hospital, we of course know, where the Princess of Wales is still being cared for following her abdominal surgery.
Let's talk to former royal correspondent for The Sun, Charles Ray. Good to see you this morning, Charles. I tell you what, we were saying this yesterday, actually. We almost seem surprised that the royal family are behaving like, well,
a family.
A family.
Well, that's very true, Steve. Good morning, both of you. It's very true. Normally, we don't see royals turn up at a hospital when one of them's in hospital, apart from occasionally the Queen visited Prince Philip in one of his longest stays in hospital. But it's nice to see that they are behaving as they always are, like normal people. They're, and I think this is showing the way the royal family is now. And isn't it great to see a united royal family instead of the bickering that's been going on behind the scenes involving Prince Andrew, Harry and Meghan and so forth. So it's really great to see that. And, Camilla's there and she's visiting her husband. And of course, they both went to see the Princess of Wales before his operation.
Yes, as we say, behaving normally. I suppose the other thing this all reminds us is that they're vulnerable to the same things we are too. King Charles been very brave in being so open about the fact that he has got prostate problems. Princess of Wales still in hospital. And then terribly sadly to hear that Fergie, the Duchess of York, is now facing skin cancer on top of the breast cancer she's already had to deal with.
That is very sad, and hopefully that she'll be able to recover from that. But the fact that the King himself has come out and given the information about the prostate cancer has certainly helped the charities involved with prostate cancer, because a number of men have literally got up off their bottoms and found out a bit more about it and contacted their doctors as well. So it's a very, very good thing that he's done. And let's not forget as well, royals did not tell us what's really going on.
Well, no, we don't normally get that sort of information. But you talk a lot about the royals having soft power, and this is a prime example of it, isn't it? Actually, the King having a real impact by his being open, and the fact we're seeing them behave in a way we're not necessarily used to, is all changing our perception, I think, a little bit, at least, of them and of their role in society. It all seems very positive.
Those critics that really don't like the royal family, you'll never change their minds. They're always going to be there. But I think you're actually right, Stephen. I think more people will have sympathy with the royals because they may be blue blood, so to speak, but they're just exactly the same as the rest of us. They suffer from the same problems and they suffer from the same health problems as well. So it's really, I think an awful lot of people will look at it and think, yeah, this is not too bad. I mean, the thing is, of course, you've got to remember that the King is a workaholic, and he will be wanting to get back very, very quickly to doing all sorts of things, like looking at his documents, having various meetings. And it's going to be a big job for the Queen to sort of tell him, look, slow down, you've got to take it easy, because he's facing 3 to 4 weeks of recuperation before you could say he's really back on his feet.
Yeah, and apparently, according to friends and family, Camilla sees that as her job half the time, is just trying to get him to slow down.
Yeah, she once joked that the only way she could get him to stop working was maybe holding a big placard up in front of his desk and say "Stop working," because he does get down to it, and he puts in a tremendous amount of time and work behind the scenes. We only see him when he's at official duties, but behind the scenes, he's got all sorts of paperwork. He's writing letters. He's got various meetings, Zoom meetings, various people coming to see him, and sometimes he's well into late at night before he's finished.
It's a heck of a thing, especially when you think he's not a young man in that sense. Charles, as always, it's really good to get your insight.
Look after yourselves.
Thank you. We ought to point out, actually, that we at Buckingham Palace say that King Charles's prostate problem is not cancer.
No.
They've made that very plain. Yeah. So just in case you were worried there.
But you need to. But you need to check out your.
You've got to check out your bits. Yes, absolutely.
I wonder if it's going to be a little bit. Does it take a long recovery time?
Well, it depends what he's had done. I don't really know.
It'll be a little bit uncomfortable. But anyway,
I'll bet the Queen is quite pleased that he's actually agreed to go into hospital and stay there for a few days, because at least then they won't let him work that hard.
I don't know. Well, maybe not that hard. I bet he's having papers.
He'll have his red box, won't he? But
yeah.
But the doctors and nurses, they're quite strict. They won't let him work that hard.
Right. Oh, that sounds quite nice. I'm not a workaholic, let me just
No,
point
me
out.
either.
OK, 17 minutes past 7. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom. And the chief of the UN Agency for Palestinians says he's shocked by the UK's decision to join 8 other countries in pausing funding to part of the UN. It follows allegations some of the staff may have been involved in the attacks on Israel on October the 7th. The Commissioner General of the UN Works and Relief Agency, Philippe Lazzarini, has spoken out. He says the decision to halt funding threatens our ongoing humanitarian work across the region, especially in the Gaza Strip.
Up to 11,000 staff working for John Lewis and Waitrose could lose their jobs over the next 5 years, as the John Lewis Partnership, which owns the stores, is considering cuts to at least 10% of the workforce. It's thought the measures could affect staff in its head office, supermarkets and department stores.
And an undercover investigation for the Sunday Times today shows that Britain's top universities are paying intermediaries to recruit overseas students. Apparently, they can buy their way into highly competitive courses with considerably lower grades than the rest of us would need to get in.
What's happened to John Lewis, do you think? I mean, John Lewis has always been such a successful brand. Are we going off it?
I don't know. But, a lot's changed. The internet world changes a lot of things. I don't know. The only thing I find... Mind you, they're talking over the next 5 years. They're not making these snap decisions, are they? But, of course, all those people, employees aren't just employees, are they? They're partners.
That's right, they are.
So they're going to have different rights and rules and regs and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So maybe they'll be able to lose it out of people just retiring or leaving.
Yes,
rather than
natural
sacking
wastage,
anyone.
as they call it.
Wastage.
Yeah.
Which is much better, obviously. But anyway.
I suppose the whole nature of the way we shop is changing.
It is. Yeah, it is. Whether we like it or not, it just is.
Now it's January, which is not a good month for us with money worries, because Christmas was only a few weeks ago and we probably all overspent. But it doesn't have to be that way. We need to learn to help us budget better.
Yeah, well, to help with that, the charity Christians Against Poverty have launched a new online campaign. They want to help people improve their financial situation.
Our reporter Anna Riley has the story.
Mum of 4, Marie Bloom, was in thousands of pounds of debt that had built up over years. Her universal credit payments didn't cover her bills, and the cost of living crisis brought bailiffs to her door.
Basically, all the main bills, council tax, gas, electric, water, all the most important bills were the ones that were getting neglected because I had to feed the children first. I had all the bills ready that were going out that I were in debt with. And I had taken out loans to help me cover things like school uniforms and things that I wouldn't have had money for. I was literally making myself ill Do you know what I mean? I would actually poorly. We worry.
Marie turned to money coaching charity Christians Against Poverty, and with their help, she's recently become debt-free.
Honestly, like a ton of bricks has been lifted off me. It's like amazing. Because I've literally suffered for years and years on my own about the debt and not telling anybody and trying to hide it from people. And it was difficult knowing that I was going to bed every night, knowing that I was getting in more and more debt and that I couldn't afford things for my children. I survived on the little bit of money that we had. And I made sure that kids had food on the table and clothes on their back and a roof over their head. But that, you know, I struggled to death every day to do that.
Helen Bolton helped Marie with her finances, and over the last year, the money coach has seen a sharp rise in people asking for assistance.
The cost of living has really tipped a lot of people over the edge with things like their gas, their electric, their water. So, I've been doing the job on and off for about 10 years, and I used to see lots of loans and catalogues and, you know, debt that had arisen perhaps because people were spending on the nice-to-have kind of things. What I found in the last 12 months or more is that more and more of the clients are coming to us where the problem is that they just can't pay the household bills.
Christians Against Poverty are now also providing free money help online, along with their face-to-face money coaching service.
Money worries are just rubbish. You know, it's stress, it's anxiety. Often it's not being able to enjoy life or pay the basics, and hey, no one wants to be in that position. So we are encouraging people to get a budget and beat those New Year blues. And over the next couple of months, there is a budget planner available that people can actually use to a bit of a template, some basic instructions to get their finances organised and feel like they're starting the year off on the right track.
It's hoped the campaign will help people swap their winter financial worries for budgeting success. Anna Riley, GB News.
You know, I feel so pleased for that lady.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because how she must feel being debt-free after all that worry and all that time, it must be like a weight
lifted off her
shoulders.
Yeah. Oh,
good on her.
Even more than that. Yeah, it must be fantastic. And I do totally admire those money coaches, people who know they can just come in and deal with everything objectively, and they know how to deal with it because they haven't got the fear that you've got.
No. But it's, in some respects, I bet it's not that difficult. Not to demean what they're doing, but because you get so wrapped up in your stuff, don't you? And if somebody just come in and just go, right, cut this, cut that, cut that.
And talk to them. They always say you should confront the money worry. If you've got somebody to whom you owe money, or, you know, you can't pay your mortgage, ring the mortgage company, talk to them about it. That takes courage when you're scared.
Yeah.
And that's what a money coach can do much more easily and sort something out.
Yeah.
But yeah, after being frightened, to then be debt-free must be wonderful.
I don't know why we do have this thing where we don't want to admit we've got a problem with loads of stuff in life, and sometimes...
Is it peculiarly British, that? We don't like talking about money, do we?
Oh, no, we don't.
So maybe we're not very good at handling debt either, for the same reason. We find it a matter of shame, or something like that. You don't like to admit it.
Yeah, when it really shouldn't be.
Especially not at the moment.
If you need help, get in there. They're launching their online campaign. Get online, have a word with them. It's a free service.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what the weather's going to do for us all today. Here's Craig.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Looking ahead to today, most of us should see some sunshine at times, and for all, it will be feeling very mild. So we start the day actually with a touch of frost in the east, but here we'll see bright skies from the word go. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around and maybe the odd spit and spot of rain, but most of this cloud will tend to break up a little bit as we go into the afternoon, allowing some spells of sunshine. But up towards parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, we will see this band of rain move in during the afternoon, and that will be accompanied by some very strong winds. But with the winds coming in from the south, it's going to be a very mild day. Actually, some parts of northern Wales could see highs reaching 16 to 17 degrees. Into the evening, the rain just slowly moves its way southeastwards across parts of Scotland, eventually moving into northern England and the far north of Wales later on in the night. But to the south of it, it remains mild but rather cloudy. Could just see a touch of frost as the rain clears up across the far north of Scotland. So Monday morning, we start off rather grey but mild in the south. This rain actually becomes quite slow moving across parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So quite a grey, wet day to come here. But to the north of it, actually, it does start to cheer up and we will see some spells of sunshine, but also some blustery showers. Temperatures in the north cooler than on Sunday, but still mild in the south.
Thanks very much, Craig. Right, do stick with us because we're going to be talking about facial recognition technology. It's everywhere, even in supermarkets. But is that right? We'll be debating that next.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Richy Sunx and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning to you, it's 7:30. Now, should supermarkets be using facial recognition technology? Well, analysis by the group Big Brother Watch used data supplied by Southern Co-op to find out there's more facial recognition technology apparently being used in deprived areas.
Yes, is that fair? Let's speak to former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley and Big Brother Watch's senior advocacy officer Madeleine Stone. Peter, should we be upset at the idea of just walking into a supermarket and having our faces sort of analysed?
No, because CCTV has been with us for many decades now. We accept that as a part of everyday life. What I would say is that Parliament have been very slow to create a regulatory framework around facial recognition techniques. But no, this is technology which already is lowering crime rates. It's very useful. The Met Police did a facial recognition exercise down in Croydon only this week, and it led to a dozen people being arrested, 8 of whom were wanted on warrant for crimes of violence. So it's useful technology as long as it's deployed correctly.
All right, Madeleine, so if we've done nothing wrong, we've nothing to fear, is the sort of message on that?
Well, that's certainly not the case, because as we've seen with computer systems like Horizon, when these things go wrong, they can go really wrong. And facial recognition is notorious for problems with accuracy. Actually, just recently, about a week ago, a man in the US was arrested using facial recognition. He was stopped up accused of theft. And he was put in jail, and he was completely innocent, and now he's suing the company. So, I mean, this is a story we've seen time and time again of people being wrongly stopped by a kind of dodgy algorithm, and then they've been blacklisted across different stores. People have been had their fingerprints taken by police.
Yeah, forgive me for interrupting, but yes, it's not going to be nice if something goes wrong. But things go wrong all the time with policing and all sorts. And presumably, with this, if you are wrongly arrested, it's going to be pretty easy to clear your name. If it's going on, well, we think you're Joe Smith and you can prove that you're not. Why is there a big problem?
Well, that's not how we do policing. Okay. Very kind of proud history of innocent until proven guilty. And when we're relying on technology like this, it completely flips that over. It's like the computer says you're guilty until you can prove otherwise. And that's not how we've typically ever done criminal justice. So this is a real step change in policing, in the justice system. That could be very, very dangerous indeed.
Peter?
It's fanciful. It's ridiculous to suggest that technology finds people guilty. Courts do that, magistrates and judges. And if somebody was detained, courtesy of this technology, then fingerprints, DNA, all of those checks which are taken almost immediately somebody arrives at a police station would very, very quickly discover if there had been some kind of mistake or mistaken identity, for example.
Yeah, Madeleine. So, I mean, that's a safeguard in place, isn't it?
I mean, the idea that people could be hauled into police stations, regularly, if this technology is rolled out more widely on the basis of facial recognition match, I think people would be very unhappy about that. I mean, that's not an insignificant thing to happen to you. Imagine if you were going to get a pint of milk, have your face scanned by a algorithm, which is what's currently happening clearly in some areas, and the police are doing it, and you get hauled away to a police station. I mean, that could be extremely damaging. I mean, also they get blacklisted, they get banned in different stores. I don't think that we should accept that we could just be taken to a police station on the basis of a camera. That's really
See, this is
concerning.
There may well be lots of people watching and listening who would agree with you. What I don't understand, though, is why you're equating being taken to a police station to being found guilty of something, because it's not the same thing. I admit it might not be a nice experience, but these things happen in a free society, don't they? That you are taken in, you're questioned, and very often released without charge and acknowledgement that a mistake was made.
I'm not equating them. I mean, I can obviously see it's not the same as being convicted, but it's not insignificant. And I think if we look at the kind of places that are using facial recognition really widely, that have really embraced it, it's countries like China and Russia. They're the ones who use it to kind of bolster a really intrusive, police-heavy society where there's very limited freedom. Whereas you look at places, our democratic allies in the US, in Europe, there's moves to ban it, there's moves to restrict it, because there's this understanding that this technology could have really dangerous implications for our privacy, for discrimination, and for our kind of very basic freedoms.
Yeah, does it smack of sort of becoming a police state, Peter?
This woman's arguments favour criminals, whereas I am an enemy of criminals. We live in an utterly and increasingly lawless nation. in my leafy London borough alone in the last week or so. We've had a murder, we had a marauding mob going through shops yesterday, we've had a jogger, a woman out jogging, accosted by two people in hoodies and such like. Crime is everywhere. Shoplifting is at absolute epidemic proportions, and things that are reasonably tested exist within a legal framework and help retailers, police and in turn the greater public will always get my support.
Should we leave it there? Interesting, isn't it?
Madeline, Peter, thanks
Thank
both
you.
very much indeed. Love your views on that one. Often we say that and think, oh, we sort of know what you're going to say. On this one, I just don't know.
I don't know. My mind has totally changed, I think, as I've got older, and I don't know why that would be either. But I would have felt very much like Madeline years ago when we used to debate whether or not we should have ID cards. And I thought, no, that's a step too far. I wouldn't be frightened of ID cards at all now.
No.
It's as Peter was saying, I feel our society is getting more criminal, and I think we need to fight back against it.
I've always had the attitude, and you may disagree, that if you haven't done anything wrong, you've nothing to fear from this sort of thing. Madeline's quite right. Mistakes will happen, but then if I was arrested, it's not going to be a nice experience, it'd be a bit of a shock, but I'd be perfectly confident I could prove
If you had an ID card, you'd be able to prove it,
Well,
wouldn't you?
yeah. So it's, and in that sense, I would just say, well, the police are doing their job on information received. And
I think we've
we'll
just got to
sort it
fight
out.
back against this tide of rising criminality. We've just got to do something about it.
Oh, well, let us know what
Let
you
us
think.
know.
gbviews@gbnews.com.
Right, now it's time for sport. Here's Aidan.
Oh, yes, better get some cricket updates.
Yes, absolutely. The tide beginning to turn for England in Hyderabad, it would appear. They finished before lunch at 4:20 all out. Great stand yesterday by Ollie Pope, 196 with the bat. Lunch happened. India have gone back in. 2 key wickets have been taken. And it's Ollie Pope again, this time catching the two guys at the top of India's top order out. So it's all to play for. As things stand, there may have been an update in the last couple of minutes, but India needing 188 from 8 wickets remaining. So all to play for. And this is the beauty of Bazball. Remember we spoke about Bazball last time? You said, get rid of Baz, Aidan. What do we need Baz for? Well, Bazball is all about when England look as if they're in trouble. That gives you a route out because they can be expansive. You never know what's going to happen, and they've made up the chase. And if they can get India out now for the requisite number of runs, it could be an excellent first Test victory for England, much needed as well. And Australia have lost to West Indies as well in the last 20 minutes.
Oh right.
What else is happening? The tennis hasn't started yet, has it?
No, that's another 2 hours yet.
That's the men's final in the
Medvedev
Australian
against
Open.
Yannick Sinner of Italy. Yes, we're looking forward to that one as well.
What's your money on?
I think Medvedev, just because he's the panto villain, and I think he's got a bit to prove. He has lost 2 of those finals. The one 2 years ago, we sat here talking about it when you first joined the channel, as I recall. It was right in the midst of the Novak Djokovic vaccine passport situation. So it was kind of overshadowed, even if he had one, because that was the story. But he was 2 sets up against Rafa Nadal, and he blew it. And I'd like to think that he's learned from that. And he's had the trouble. He's been banned from Wimbledon as well because he's Russian. So he's had some turmoil in his life as well. I'd like to see him win it just because there's another Grand Slam to back up the one he won in 2021 in Flushing Meadows in the US. So yeah, I think I would just edge him for now. And he had a big workout in the semi against Alexander Zverev. So I think that might carry him through to the final. Sometimes you can go through and not drop sets. Sometimes you need a bit of a workout just to get you in that get your game face on.
Yeah, you should that every
Game
morning.
face.
I do.
Lovely.
That big cruise ship.
Oh, yeah. Oh, would you fancy a big cruise ship?
Well,
10,000 people on board.
But I heard what you were talking about earlier on. What was interesting was that I've never understood why cruises were not marketed to younger people. It's right on my street.
They are now.
Getting dressed up, going out there, talking to people, chewing the fat.
That's what Dave says. Morning, Dave. I think he thinks we were snobby for talking down the huge ship. We weren't. It was,
just not our
horses
bag.
for courses. He says it's not. It's how many of us get a sociable break with high service levels and exotic places. So he sounds like you go and have a fantastic time. Rod, however, says, sounds to me like hell on water. Give me a flask of tea and a sandwich on the banks of the River Wharfe in the Yorkshire Dales. That's my idea of a holiday.
Yeah, you see, I'm with you, Rod, on that. But it's not being snobbish or anti. It's just like different people like different things. We like the countryside.
Steve says that cruise ship looks like
Middle
a
of
floating
nowhere.
Milton Keynes.
How dare you? Actually, that's the big misconception. People think it's a built-up area. Milton Keynes is the least built-up area you'll ever go to.
Well, that's why they built it in the first place, wasn't it?
Well, that's right.
Well, that's why they built it in the first place, because it was rural and it's right in the middle of the country.
It's a garden city type place, isn't it?
It's the greenest
But
place
you do
you'll
have
ever go.
lots of
How
super
dare you,
duper.
Steve?
You do have lots of super duper amusement type things, don't you?
There's quite a few. There's a few.
There's the
bits
thing where you can go para.
Yeah, the iFly, whatever you call it. And
I've done that.
I've done
Yeah,
that. Yeah, brilliant.
That's brilliant.
And
the ski slopes
and all
and everything.
that's all in one
Yes.
building. And
Yeah.
How many roundabouts in Milton Keynes do we think? Here we go.
Is this a trick question?
No.
15. That's ridiculous.
In
150.
In excess of 130.
Yeah.
The football ground has a prison cell because it's required for...
No.
It is, but to gain elite level UEFA status, you have to have one in case you get any troublemakers on site.
All right.
Mm.
Very few traffic lights in Milton Keynes.
I wonder if a cruise ship has a prison cell.
Oh, Peter, what do you reckon?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, ferries do.
'Cause you never...
Yeah, they have secure detention facilities because sometimes people misbehave themselves.
Wow. Put them in the brig.
Way.
There you
When
go.
it's
In the brig.
booze. When it's unlimited booze as well, you know.
Yeah.
Saw a film about in the brig once.
On a cruise ship, maybe the prison cell has a balcony. No.
I doubt it. It won't even have a porthole.
All right, well, we'll put
anyway.
that right. It's not a floating Milton Keynes
No,
because
it is
Pam
not.
says it's a floating Blackpool. OK, enough.
My in-laws are in Blackpool. Just be very careful, you lot.
Hello to everybody in Milton Keynes and Blackpool. We do not mean that derogatorily.
Do not. Still to come are the Conservatives rigging election rules. Well, that's the accusation. We'll have a look at those details in the papers in just a couple of minutes.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:46. Good morning. Let's see what's in the papers for you this morning with Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers, and the author and journalist Susan Holder. Good morning to you both. Fraser.
Good morning.
Let's have a look at this UN agency that's at the centre of a whole load of issues.
Yeah, so this is the UNRWA. I don't know quite how you're supposed to pronounce it. The United Nations Works and Relief Agency. It's an agency that's dedicated entirely to Palestine, and it's been discovered, or it's been alleged, that 12 of its employees not only linked to Hamas, but actually took part in the October the 7th massacre, which is extraordinary. This has come out as a result of lots of people have been arrested by Israel, and they've been interrogating them, and now they've been linked quite explicitly to this. One of the hostages who was released said that she was housed in a UN worker's house, like the person keeping her captive was working for the United Nations.
Oh, my goodness.
The links between this agency and Hamas go back a long way. Even in 2014, people were accused of fighting on the side of Hamas while being on the UN payroll. They run a lot of schools in Palestine, and some of their schools are said to include give students anti-Semitic textbooks and things like that, telling kids that they are going to defeat the usurpers one day, as they refer to the Israelis.
So now that this has been sort of exposed, the countries that give money to this relief agency, which obviously includes us too, have sort of halted the funding.
Yeah, so the UK and others like Australia and Finland are, and the US are, we're suspending our payments to it because obviously we don't want to be funding terrorism. But the head of the agency is kicked up a real fuss. He seems absolutely he's gobsmacked that people would even react to this. It's strange. This has kind of been, there's been rumours about this rumbling around for a long time, and they've always fiercely denied it. And now that it's come out, they haven't really apologised for it either.
But I guess the problem with things like this, I'm not trying to lessen any of it, so please don't start emailing in. But an organisation like that within Palestinian territories would inevitably have to have some connection with Hamas, because they were the ruling authority there, so they would have to be working with them to some degree.
Oh no, I think that would be reasonable. Yeah, Hamas absolutely are the ruling authority there. There's no question about it. But I think it's the level of involvement that is shocking. The level, getting involved in activities that are explicitly terroristic. It's not, we're not talking about negotiating with Hamas. We're not talking about, having to work with them in order to get aid into the country. Obviously, that's completely understandable. Israel has to negotiate with Hamas.
Yeah.
That's just reality of life there.
It's finding that, did you say 8?
12 people have been sacked.
On the UN payroll?
On the UN payroll.
Were actually taking part on it.
Actually, killing and possibly raping Israeli
terrible.
civilians.
Yeah. Good God.
On the other hand, if we withdraw all the funding, the relief stops.
Yeah, and those people desperately in Gaza desperately need relief. So it's absolutely appalling.
But it's the ultimate argument, which Israel has used a lot actually, is that sometimes it's relief money, relief aid, which is going directly to Hamas.
Yeah.
It's building tunnels and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and we're not the only ones doing it, so it's not like we're out on a limb on this.
No.
Like Fraser said, it's Finland, the US, Italy, Australia and Canada have all pulled their funding. For now, I mean, maybe there's an investigation, maybe that can be kind of, something can be sorted out further down the line. But what else can you do? You can't ignore it. So that decision has to be taken.
Can we talk John Lewis, Susan?
We can talk John Lewis. So according to the Mail on Sunday today, John Lewis could cut as many as 11,000 jobs in a plan to kind of revive their struggling fortunes. So they made a £234 million loss in 2022.
That's quite a loss.
It is quite a lot. It does say the partnership has reportedly raised £260 million to help fund the turnaround by selling 11 Waitrose stores, because, of course, John Lewis is linked to the Waitrose supermarket. That's all under the same umbrella, and lease them back. So that's one way they're kind of working. But I have to say, they also faced a backlash last week after they accidentally told staff that they were slashing redundancy pay in half. They later apologised and withdrew those emails. So it's all a bit. If you work at John Lewis, it must be a very scary time. But I have to say, there is a John Lewis in Cheshire I go to sometimes. And then last time I went in before Christmas. I went in specifically to buy something, a Christmas present, from the kind of electrical department. It was like a gaming thing for my son. Felt like he was 12 again. Yeah. He's 29. But anyway, that's what he wanted for Christmas. So it was quite fun. So I went in, I want this thing. And they went, oh, no, we don't have any of those in stock. I was like, oh, but I looked on the web. Oh, no, you can get it online.
Yes, that's weird, isn't it?
We've got thousands of them. I was like, well, you'll keep thousands of them, won't you? Because I wanted to come in and buy it. Call me old-fashioned, but I just thought that's what shops were for.
Yeah.
But this
have we fallen out of love with department stores?
Yeah, well, it seems we have, and I don't know why, but they do seem to be kind of, all sorts of department stores tend to kind of close up. People just don't seem to. It's online, isn't it? It's just so much easier. And when you do make the effort to go to a shop and then you go home empty-handed and just have to hit the kind of keyboard, I try really hard not to do that as much as I do.
But it's also the bottom line is, and you have to say, I mean, John Lewis, what's their slogan? Never beaten on... never knowingly undersold.
Is that them? OK, right.
But it's, it's very often, if you go to John Lewis or you go to Waitrose, you can go somewhere else and buy the same thing cheap.
Well, yeah, but that's shopping around. If you've got the energy and the...
John Lewis used to be very well known for looking after you.
Yes.
Customer service.
Yes.
You could go in and ask advice and a bit of help with ideas and things.
Yeah.
And they would take a lot of time and trouble.
And unlike some of the department stores that kind of over time did get all a bit kind of faded and jaded, and you kind of did feel like you were stepping back in time and not in a good way. John Lewis, when you go in, it's all usually nicely done. It's nicely laid out. They keep it very lovely. There generally is staff around, so it would be a shame. But the only way to save these places is to use them. Yeah. But if they're not going to have what you want on stock, they don't keep things on the shop floor or in their kind of whatever they do behind the scenes, then I don't know what they expect us to do, really.
It also has a reputation as being a good employer. Their employees have very good rights, and so they're called partners. They have some say in the direction of the company. So, it's very sad to hear that they're potentially, 11,000 staff cuts. I'm sure those jobs will be made up, but we'd rather have people in John Lewis jobs than in Amazon jobs, quite frankly.
Right, we've literally got 40 seconds. What are the Tories accused of doing, Fraser, in the Sunday Mirror?
They're accused of rigging the next election, which I think is a bit alarmist, but basically there are a whole raft of new changes to who's eligible to vote that people think will benefit the Conservatives. So there's no longer a limit to if you're an expat, you can vote in the next election. Previously, if you'd lived out in the UK for 15 years, you lose your right to vote, which seems reasonable. Yeah. So people who don't live here will be have no connection to the country will be allowed to vote. Photo ID is another thing that is said to benefit the Tories. But Jacob Rees-Mogg admitted that backfired in the recent local elections because I think a lot of elderly people didn't realise that the rules had changed. So, if you play around with the system, I don't think it ever works out the way politicians expect. No. The Tories are almost certain to lose the next election regardless of what,
yes, I don't think this is going to make that much
difference.
No.
When you come back next time, can we talk about how dogs watch television?
We can. Yes. We can talk about that.
Apparently they do. We think we're watching the television programme.
But get your dog ready for that, because we can talk to the dog directly then, can't we?
Point well made. All right.
The trouble is they won't be able to email in.
You never know. Fraser, Susan, thank you. Let's have a look at the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Looking ahead to today, most of us should see some sunshine at times, and for all, it will be feeling very mild. So we start the day actually with a touch of frost in the east, but here we'll see bright skies from the word go. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around and maybe the odd spit and spot of rain, but most of this cloud will tend to break up a little bit as we go into the afternoon, allowing some spells of sunshine. But up towards parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, we will see this band of rain move in during the afternoon, and that will be accompanied by some very strong winds. But with the winds coming in from the south, it's going to be a very mild day. Actually, some parts of northern Wales could see highs reaching 16 to 17 degrees. Into the evening, the rain just slowly moves its way southeastwards across parts of Scotland, eventually moving into northern England and the far north of Wales later on in the night. But to the south of it, it remains mild but rather cloudy. Could just see a touch of frost as the rain clears up across the far north of Scotland. So Monday morning, we start off rather grey but mild in the south. This rain actually becomes quite slow moving across parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So quite a grey, wet day to come here. But to the north of it, actually, it does start to cheer up and we will see some spells of sunshine, but also some blustery showers. Temperatures in the north cooler than on Sunday, but still mild in the south.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 28th of January. Today, after weeks of pressure over the post office scandal, the chairman has resigned, or perhaps been pushed as new leadership is now being tasked with restoring faith in the beleaguered institution. Catherine Forster has the latest.
Yes, the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, rang the Post Office chairman yesterday and by mutual agreement, he has agreed to go. Who will replace him? We don't know yet, but I'll bring you what I do know very shortly.
The United Nations hits back as 9 countries halt their funding for the United Nations Relief Agency, and that's for Palestine refugees, over allegations that some of their staff may have helped during the Hamas attack.
King Charles spending his 3rd day in hospital recovering from prostate surgery as the Queen reassures well-wishers that he's doing well.
And with warnings this week that ordinary Brits may face the call-up in the event of a war, for heaven's sake, with Russia, we'll be looking at whether the UK is actually prepared for war and what would it mean to all of us.
Now, don't let those January blues get you down. A new campaign's being launched today to help us all improve our finances in 2024.
And Aidan McGee is here with your sport.
Yes, indeed. After yesterday's exploits for Maidstone United, the FA Cup action continues today with Liverpool and Manchester United playing this afternoon. And we're just 30 minutes away from the start of the Aussie Open men's final in the tennis down in Melbourne. We'll update you on that.
And Craig Snell has your weather forecast today.
Good morning. It's going to be a mild day for all of us out there, but we will see the return of some wind and rain. Find out where in a little bit.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Earlier on, we were talking about the Charles effect, the King.
Oh, yes.
King Charles effect that it's having on men, and to actually sort of get themselves checked out. And they've been going on the NHS website and looking up prostate problems and things like that. But things may not be quite as easy as it seems, because Duncan's been in touch, morning Duncan, and said it's great news that this men's health issue is brought to the front of our minds and that people are actually coming forward and asking for treatment or tests. People may be asking for help, but they won't be getting it. My GP made an urgent referral for me recently, and then I received a letter from the hospital telling me it'll be 52 weeks before I receive an appointment date. And Martin says much the same thing. Martin's 64 and from Wigan, morning. He says, I've got the same problem as the King. I've been waiting for treatment for nearly 12 months. And I'm told that the waiting list for the surgical procedure I may need is probably going to be another 2 to 3 years. So everyone's going to get checked out, has a very long wait in front of them.
Yeah.
That's not
a problem.
Good news,
It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And especially, I mean, if it's a cancer issue, then I presume that would be viewed more rapidly, you would imagine.
One would hope so.
One would hope so. But for an enlarged prostate, I mean, that causes a lot of problems. So you still need it looking at quickly.
Yeah.
This is the advantage of going private, isn't it? Which, of course, the King is not being treated on the NHS. Well, that's the nature of it all. But no, several years waiting list. No.
To be told it's going to be 52 weeks before you get a hospital appointment, that's not good.
And just a quick one on John Lewis, because actually I'd forgotten about this. I have a friend, a lady in her 80s, who always shops in John Lewis. She likes it. And she was moaning about the boss.
Actually, the boss of John Lewis, the whole organisation.
Penny from Watlington says the trouble with John Lewis is that the chairwoman has never been in retail before and doesn't know how to run the company. Yes, you see, I'd heard that, but apparently she's going. Apparently she is going. Was in there yesterday talking to a member of staff about her, and the consensus was she should have gone a long time ago, bring in someone who knows what they're doing.
Well, yes.
I had heard that. I know nothing about the lady, to be honest, but why they would hire someone who... I don't think she's been in the job that long. I can't remember now, but big business background, but you think they would... You think retail experience would be
pretty vital, yes.
But anyway, keep your thoughts coming through, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now to our top story this morning. After weeks of scandal, the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, has said there is a need for new leadership at the Post Office, as the outgoing chairman has now agreed to step down.
Well, government officials say an interim will be appointed shortly, and then a recruitment process will be launched in due course in accordance with the Governance Code for Public Appointments.
Well, our political correspondent Catherine Forster joins us now. This all happened as a result of a phone call from Kebby Badenoch last night, I think.
Yes, so the business secretary rang Henry Staunton, the chairman. He's only had been in the job since December 2022, and he has agreed to stand down. Now, they say by mutual agreement, but it seems fairly clear that he didn't have a choice in the matter. And the specifics of what the business secretary had issue with him are not that clear. We know there's issues about the payment of some mistaken bonuses, a row over a director, but what does seem clear, basically, is that this is as a result of the huge fallout that there has finally been over the Horizon scandal. And of course, although there's been stories for many, many years, this is something that began 25 years ago. It's really just this ITV drama, Mr. Bates and the Post Office, which so many of us watched, which really captured the imagination, which has led to this huge scrutiny now and outrage from the public. And I think the decision to get rid of the chairman now, obviously, none of the stuff going back was his fault. But I think a lot of this is about sending a message to the public that the government is doing something. And
well, it's interesting though, because it's almost an open goal for the government, isn't it? In the sense that you say, we're addressing this, we're doing something. Politically, it's very difficult to be too critical, in that successive governments have absolutely failed on this issue. But
and you wonder whether they would have done anything at all had it not been for the drama.
You do, because the inquiry is ongoing. We saw Post Office executive, Fujitsu executives coming out really rather badly in the last few weeks. But the focus that the media has had on that is much bigger. That inquiry started last year and we didn't hear a lot from it.
No.
Let's face it, is this drama that's really sort of galvanised attention. But yes, as you say, Stephen, I mean, the system was put in the late 1990s. Fujitsu whistleblowers now say that they knew it was a bag of something I can't say this time of morning, but they didn't have anything better, so it was put in anyway. Now, concerns were raised under Tony Blair's government. Concerns reached government under successive ministers, about a dozen Post Office ministers, Ed Davey being the most high profile. Of course, he's come in for a lot of criticism. But basically, successive politicians of all stripes did not do enough. Successive Post Office bosses, Fujitsu bosses, the list goes on and on and on.
Because we are in an election year now, where do you think this, in terms of Ed Davey, where is he on all of this? Because his issue, I mean, yes, he was at the helm through...
He was Post Office Minister, wasn't he?
Through some of this, but so a lot of other people have been as well. Is he still facing a huge problem from this as leader of the Liberal Democrats, in the sense that he didn't apologise? When that car crash interview where he absolutely point blank refused to apologise, is that going to dog him, do we think?
Certainly isn't going to help him, is it, coming up
It's going to come up with every interview he does now.
An election.
He's going to be asked.
Because, and you wonder about the advice that he was given in that interview, he was asked again and again, just say sorry, it's the least that these people deserve. And he would say, well, I regret, of course, I didn't know. But, you know, how hard is it to say you're sorry? Now, of course, he was one Post Office minister. Alan Bates, who was the hero, the guy that spearheaded this campaign, I think there'd probably be nowhere without him, the star of the drama as well, wrote to Ed Davey 5 times and was sort of batted away. He did have one meeting. Sir Ed Davey says that, you know, he did ask questions, but he was reassured. He obviously didn't ask enough questions, as others have too. I think it is certainly damaging for him, but also Sir Ed Davey doesn't have a massive amount of cut through. A lot of people barely know still who he is. But it will stick in the minds of a fair few voters, I would expect, come the election. Oh, yes, this is the chap that ignored the concerns of these hundreds of, well, not hundreds in his case, but the people that have been brought to his attention and didn't do anything. And quite why he compounded that by refusing to say sorry.
It must have been lawyers. The lawyers must have advised him, don't say sorry because it implies responsibility or guilt. But that's not good enough, is it?
No,
really?
Just frankly isn't. Interestingly, Dan from Northumberland's been in touch, saying no one's talking about the Ofcom supporting Royal Mail's bid to bring down deliveries to 3 days a week. What use are these watchdogs? Well, we did talk about that the other day, but it's also worth bearing in mind, and this is where it all gets a bit confusing, that Royal Mail and Post Office are now two separate entities.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are, and I'm not sure whether people would know that necessarily, but yes, Royal Mail was privatised and is now a private company and has been for some years, and the Post Office is still owned by the government. So they are entirely separate. As far as Royal Mail and deliveries is concerned, there was speculation in the last few days that Saturday deliveries might be axed. Now, Richy Sunx came out very firmly and said, no, that's not going to happen. But there's only about half the amount of letters being sent that we used to send. The money is in parcels and you pay more and more for a stamp and it takes longer and longer to arrive. And some talk of, we could have a service where you take 3 days to get a letter. Well, what's the point of that?
Yeah, exactly. OK, Catherine, for now, thanks very much indeed.
Let's move on. It's 11 minutes past 8. Now, the chief of the UN Agency for Palestinians has said he is shocked by the UK's decision to join 8 other countries, and they include Finland, the US, Italy, Australia, Canada, to pause funding to their relief agency, UNRWA.
Yeah, it follows allegations that some of the staff may have been involved in the attacks on Israel on October the 7th. Now, the organisation has launched an investigation into several employees and fired 9 out of 12 of them being investigated.
Now, the Commissioner General of UNRWA, that's Philip Lazzarini, has spoken out saying the decision to halt funding threatens our ongoing humanitarian work across the region, including and especially in the Gaza Strip.
Well, let's talk to Miri Eisin of the International Institute for Counterterrorism at the Reichman University in Israel. Good to see you this morning. This is absolutely shocking. If it is the case that the UN Work and Relief Agency operating in Gaza has been, at least members of that on the UN payroll, have been in cahoots with Hamas.
But what you're saying is cahoots, and I'm saying they were much more than in cahoots. They actually participated. We're talking right now about a challenge that Israel has had for many years when it comes to the United Nations Relief and Welfare Agency for the Palestinian refugees. And one of the main reasons is that the bulk of the employees of UNRWA, both in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, and there's also in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, the bulk of the employees are the Palestinian refugees themselves. And as such, it's very challenging to understand that difference that we have there, that they participate and are part of the Palestinian people inside the Gaza Strip. And in this case, Israel transferred hardcore evidence of the actual participation of 12 employees in the attack on October 7th.
I mean, this has come as a terrible shock to us. We find it utterly revolting, that very idea. Is it something you've always known, though, or suspected?
Israel has spoken for many years, Anne, about the challenge of the education system of UNRWA, the main education system that teaches from kindergarten through 8th grade, both in the Gaza Strip and all of the refugee camps also in the West Bank and in other areas, is vehemently both anti-Semitic, does not recognize Israel's right to exist. So we're talking about an education system that enables, sadly, the radicalization. On the education issue, both the EU and the UK have defunded a lot of the education system over the last 5 years because of the way things were taught. But here we're already talking about the result of such an education system. When you teach people to hate, when you dehumanize the other side, those are the results that you can expect. It's horrible, it's horrific, and it needs to change.
So what do you make of what the head of UNRWA has been saying then about this defunding which is now taking place across 9 major countries for his organisation? He's very critical of that. Is he being absolutely naive?
At the end, we're talking, and my heart can say this clearly, we're talking about the real challenge of the poorest people, and in an area where they really are victims. I can only think of the Palestinian people, both in the Gaza Strip and in other refugee camps, as the victims of organizations, genocidal terror organizations like Hamas. And so when you talk about UNRWA at least trying to bring them food, water, medicine, I understand the challenge of what that is. I think that it will be terrible if there's a worse humanitarian arena. But how can you fund an organization that allows this to happen within their own ranks? They're the ones who should have seen this. They're the ones who should have stopped this way before, and it's something that they've been called out on. As I said, on the education, which brings the radicalization, which enables those terrorists to come and do what they did, that's been called out for many years.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no way that countries like the United Kingdom could sit back in all good conscience knowing that they're funding Hamas or funding an anti-Semitic ideology. I mean,
it makes you wonder what can happen next. What can happen now?
So to me, I mean, I've always been one of the people, and I'm not the regular Israeli voice, who has said that if you cut off UNRWA cold turkey, you were definitely doing something against extremism and terrorism, and at the same time, you're hurting people who need the help. I don't have an easy way to do so. But right now, when you have clear-cut evidence that UNRWA, some of the employees were involved in that, and I'll add in that over the last 4 months, and I've raised it with you too, Israel has spoken about the fact that some of the international organizations that are supposed to be the ones helping the Gazans in the Gaza Strip, getting them food, getting them water, have been ones that have not made it easy for Israel to enable the entrance of the humanitarian help into the Gaza Strip. So let's make sure that we're all on the table, that those voices that are trying to help Hamas are sidelined, not just in attacking Israel, but let's say they're helping Hamas by not letting or enabling the humanitarian assistance to come into the Gaza Strip. So, Anne, if you asked what next, that's what I'm looking at right now.
OK, Miri Aysin, as always, it's good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. What a terrible, terrible mess.
Oh, it's just horrific, isn't it? It's horrific. I mean, heck, what do you do? I can't understand what the boss of UNRWA is saying, really, and he needs to be looking very closely at what on earth is going on and coming up with
relief
solutions.
agency should be completely
Impartial.
independent and impartial, absolutely, and clearly hasn't been.
OK. Now, earlier this week, the Chief of the British Army, General Sir Patrick Sanders, warned the British public could face being called up to fight because our military is too small.
But what would war actually look like for the UK if it were to occur?
Yeah, and was he making a genuine point, or was he actually just sort of trying to say we need more funding for the army? Let's talk to Professor Anthony Gleeson, security and intelligence expert at the University of Buckingham, who agrees with calls made earlier this week to prepare citizens for an outbreak of war. Good to see you this morning. I mean, is this a realistic thing to do, or is it a bit of scaremongering in a way to try and get more funding?
No, I don't think it's scaremongering at all. I think what's really important is for people to realise that it isn't scaremongering. It's predicated on a number of things happening, and it's worthwhile bearing in mind that some of those things might not happen after all. There were credible reports just a few weeks ago that Putin was either dead or or dying, and people like myself repeated them and hoped they were true. They're clearly not true. But what is true is that Russia is now spending 40% of its national budget on defense. That is an enormous amount of money. So when we have General Sir Patrick saying that by 2027, we must be in a position to have an armed force that can deter Putin, if he's still there, if it is Putin, and deter Russia from attacking further countries in Europe, then we, then we have to boost our spending on our armed forces. The fundamental point is this: we have nuclear deterrence, thankfully, and they deter our enemies from hitting us with nuclear weapons because they would be obliterated if they were to do so. But that does not mean their conventional war has been ruled out. Indeed, we look at Ukraine, we can see how Putin's aggression is executed in a conventional way without the use of nuclear weapons. There's no sign that nuclear weapons would ever be used in his war with Ukraine. So it follows that we cannot rely on in the case of the UK, our Trident submarine nuclear force to keep war away, but rather that we must boost our conventional forces. And it can only be done with an element of conscription. It could be voluntary conscription for people who want to fight for this country to bring us up to 220,000 troops or thereabouts.
That, I mean, you call it voluntary conscription, certainly maybe aggressive campaigning and recruitment. But we could, if we put our effort into it and if the government put money behind it, we couldn't we, recruit more armed forces?
Of course. I mean, traditionally, the United Kingdom has had lots and lots of soldiers. I mean, 20 years ago, a far greater number of soldiers. When I was a schoolboy in the 1950s, we had began that decade by having over 1 million men under arms. So, of course, it can be afforded. It is a question of what our national priorities are. Now, this is an election year, and the Ministry of Defence been very quick to shoot down those people who said we've got to prepare for a conventional war in Europe. Grant Shapps has pointed to new kinds of weapons that we're developing, kind of magic laser beams to shoot drones out of the sky. Even if these happen, they're a long way off. And the time frame is much, much tighter. And it's tighter because we have a situation where Putin is not going to get out of Ukraine anytime soon. Yes, we can increase the weapons we send to Ukraine, but on present form, he's not going to get out of there. And if he's allowed to prevail in Ukraine, then he will begin to do what he's already said he was going to do, which is start to work on the post-1997 NATO members to take them out of the orbit of NATO and into Russia's orbit, to recreate the geopolitical entity that was the Soviet Union. He's saying these things. We need to take him seriously. And as I say, it is only conventional forces that can stop it. People don't like to hear it. The government in an election year doesn't want to say, look, in 3 or 4 years, we may have to start signing people up. But the defense of our country is the most important single duty of any government, including this one.
Yeah, quite right. Anthony, good to see you. Thank you. And I do know we are watched, extensively in the armed forces in this country.
We are? We are what?
Watched.
Watched?
GB News.
Oh, I see. Oh, right, yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
I wonder what you meant.
No, it's a Big
the
Brother.
Russians are spying on us.
No.
Yes, we are.
And so, you've got to say thank you for what you're doing, and you need more resources, and you need more money, and you need more equipment, and you need more colleagues.
And do you know, we are a society where there are a lot of young men and women around who don't know what they want to do with themselves at all, and probably come out of school and go straight on the dole because they don't know what to do. And actually, they could be providing a service, being well trained, maybe in the army or something like that, and then we would all feel a bit more reassured.
Yeah, and learning discipline, having some, a career and a future and all the rest of it.
Maybe we've got to start aggressively campaigning to show
think so.
young people that actually there's a career there.
And you need to show more respect to those people
Who are already
who are
serving.
or who have served. We need to change that. Be more patriotic in this country.
It could be easily changed, you know. You can change the atmosphere quite easily. Just needs a bit of campaigning to be done.
Yeah, maybe that's what we should start. Anyway, enough of that for now. Let's see what the weather's going to do for you with Craig.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, most of us should see some sunshine at times, and for all, it will be feeling very mild. So we start the day actually with a touch of frost in the east, but here we'll see bright skies from the word go. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around and maybe the odd spit and spot of rain, but most of this cloud will tend to break up a little bit as it goes into the afternoon, allowing some spells of sunshine. But up towards parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, we will see this band of rain move in during the afternoon, and that will be accompanied by some very strong winds. But with the winds coming in from the south, it's going to be a very mild day. Actually, some parts of northern Wales could see highs reaching 16 to 17 degrees. Into the evening, the rain just slowly moves its way southeastwards across parts of Scotland, eventually moving into northern England and the far north of Wales later on in the night. But to the south of it, it remains mild but rather cloudy. Could just see a touch of frost as the rain clears up across the far north of Scotland. So Monday morning, we start off rather grey but mild in the south. This rain actually becomes quite slow moving across parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So quite a grey, wet day to come here. But to the north of it, actually, it does start to cheer up and we will see some spells of sunshine, but also some blustery showers. Temperatures in the north cooler than on Sunday, but still mild in the south.
Thanks very much indeed. Still to come, we'll be getting the latest sport news with Aidan McGee. That's coming up.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:30. Let's see what Aidan McGee's got for us this morning.
Maidstone United, all about Maidstone United in the FA Cup yesterday. Fantastic performance by them at Ipswich. One of the great upsets in FA folklore, right up there with the very best from the 60s, 70s and 80s. In fact, it's the first time that a side, I think they're 3 divisions below the professional pyramid, have got to the FA Cup fifth round since Blythe Spartans in 1978. It's an extraordinary...
When you were but a lad.
78, I would have been... I was born in 77, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's all those people I've lied about my age. I'm clean.
I'm clean now.
You outed me. Thanks very much indeed. So, look, they went there yesterday. They had 2 shots on goal, Stephen, and they scored both of them. Ipswich had 38 shots on goal, 13 on target, only managed 1. But that's just them. As Boris Johnson once said, them's the breaks. And they go into the FA Cup draw tomorrow. And then we've got Liverpool-Norwich City today at 2:30, the first match since Jurgen Klopp announced he'd be leaving at the end of the season on Friday. And then Manchester United go to Newport County today at 4:30. Now, there's been a little bit of controversy around the build-up because Marcus Rashford has been spotted on consecutive nights out.
He's not well, poor lamb.
I know.
But that's the trouble, isn't it? That's what he told the boss.
Yeah, he's probably, as you said last hour, that's probably the truth. But if you've had 2 nights out in a row in Belfast, which can be quite a raucous night out, then there's no surprise there. But he has a former United Academy colleague who now plays for a club in Northern Ireland. He went to see him via using a private jet, heading over to Aldergrove, and he was spotted 2 nights in a row. They had training on Friday and a match today. Erik ten Hag said Friday, actually, that he was ill. So that means he's probably not in contention. And it's not the first time it's happened. They lost to Manchester City earlier in the season. He was seen out after the game. Yeah, that's not the biggest sin in the world, but it's not a good look when you've just been beaten at home by your big
I'll tell you
rivals.
what I find upsetting about this, as someone who doesn't know a great deal about him, but he is a role model. He's been lauded as this great role model, in the tremendous work he's...
Well, all these players are role models to some degree, but he even more so, because he transcends his sport. Lots of people who have no interest in football know exactly who Marcus Rashford is, and he was a key protagonist in the campaign to reinstate free school meals during lockdown back in 2020. He took on the government and showed a great deal of courage, earned a great deal of respect and became an icon. So I just don't think he believes his future lies at Manchester United. I think there may be a decision made in the summer. Yeah, look, he's still a decent age to achieve elsewhere. I just don't think he feels happy in this particular setup.
What's happening in the cricket?
In the cricket right now, India need 150 runs to win with 7 wickets remaining, but that doesn't tell the story because England are right on top at the moment. They posted 420 before lunch earlier on with Ollie Pope racking up 196, which is an extraordinary total. And this is the weaker order of the Indian batsmen at the crease now, and so they should be more vulnerable in theory. And so if England get them out, that's an extraordinary win because they didn't look as if they were going to get that yesterday. And I should mention as well, in tennis, the Australian Open men's final.
Well, they'll be walking out on court right now, won't they?
That's right. We're underway just a minute or so from now. And Yannick Sinner against Daniel Medvedev, that is. And we've got a better picture. Remember we mentioned last hour about Arina Sabalenka?
Sabalenka, yeah.
She signs her fitness trainer, Jason Stacey's head before each match. There we go, we got it. We got it. For the benefit of our radio listeners, we can see that...
Well, he looks like a right plonker with that on his head, doesn't he?
Well, to be fair, he doesn't know he's being filmed.
But it's become a superstition with her, hasn't it?
Yeah, she thinks...
She believes doing that brings her luck, and it certainly seems to have worked.
Well, it does. I mean, she's retained the trophy, and it's very hard to win down there because of the conditions at the best of times, but she felt she needed to loosen up a little bit and be a little bit less robotic around the court and away from the court. and just show more of her personality, and it seems to work. Relaxation is so key because they play so close together within 36 to 48 hours between them, so they need to do that.
So she does that by signing a bald man's head.
I mean, goodness only knows how that came about, but
yeah, I know.
You can understand you wouldn't want to stop doing it
in that heat. So when he wipes it off, presumably his head goes red because of the heat. When he wipes it off, he might just get an imprint.
Tattoo,
a little tattoo. Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite cool, isn't it?
A little sunburn tattoo.
I know.
It's not cool. No,
it's an odd thing to do. I'd like to know
weird,
how it started, but I can understand her not wanting to stop it.
Yes.
I'd like to do very well in the next hour, Abe.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to write my name on your forehead.
In your engraved pen.
There you go.
Oh, no, it's on there. I don't know if it's there or not, do I?
Oh, it's there. You're stuck with that now. Well, come on. It's indelible.
Oh, great.
Good to see you both.
Do you want to go, Anne?
No. Coming up, we're going to be talking through the newspapers, in particularly looking at the idea that we think when we're at home relaxing in front of the box, we're watching a TV programme that we love. But apparently, dogs have favourite TV programmes, and they are watching the television every bit as much as we are. Talk about that next.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Richy Sunx and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go on.
No, I was just saying, I always think... Good morning.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. I always think it's very funny, the things we talk about during the break. And then we suddenly sort of say, we're on air. But we were talking about Milton Keynes. We've been talking about Milton Keynes a lot today.
Yes, I was just saying Susan needs to come and visit.
And I'd be very glad to.
Yes.
Yeah, put the kettle on, I'll be round.
How many roundabouts?
In excess of 130, but very few.
Do I have to go round? Do I have to go around all of them to get to your house?
No.
Yes.
Well, you can if you like. You can never get lost in Milton.
The scenic route.
You can never get lost in Milton Keynes
That's
because
true.
you just come to
keep
the next
going round.
roundabout.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very easy.
Anyway, as you've probably gathered, Susan Holder is with us, also Fraser Myers, and to look through the papers. And we're starting with one of these things what we just didn't know about Richy Sunx.
Yeah, so Richy Sunx is a fan of intermittent fasting. He fasts for 36 hours every week from Sunday at 5 p.m. to Tuesday at 5 a.m.
That's not intermittent fasting, though, is it?
That's a big one, isn't it?
Well, that's a big... Oh, that's a proper fast. Oh, OK. The Times is comparing it to intermittent fasting. I mean, apparently it's good for weight loss and things like that. But it's extraordinary. I mean, I personally would probably keel over by, the Monday afternoon if I was...
So he'll be having a really good Sunday roast, won't he, today?
I hope so,
And then at 5, no more eating.
No more eating.
Until Tuesday morning.
Yeah, and just, and only drinking, calorie-free drinks, so just coffee and water and things like that.
Well, he is very slim.
Well, and of course, he's Hindu, and I think it is quite prevalent in the Hindu culture. But, I mean, intermittent fasting is meant to be a really good way to go. And it is meant to... I mean, I'm just thinking, maybe don't ask him much on a Monday morning, because I don't know about you, but if I've gone... I mean, I'm struggling now with the fact that we get up and come and do this without any breakfast, really, because it's too early to eat. And then you do kind of wonder, am I making sense by the time it gets to about this point? No, I'm not. Are you just talking about me? But apparently it is meant to boost brain function and lower blood pressure, which I would think as Prime Minister there's probably quite a lot of that going on.
Maybe if you were working like we do at the weekends, then you could, from 5 o'clock this afternoon, you just go to bed for 24 hours.
Oh,
sleep through your fast.
Yeah, you sleep through your fast.
Unfortunately, it's not an option for the Prime Minister on Monday.
No.
But I wonder if around the offices of 10 Downing Street, they sort of say, it's a Monday, he's a bit crabby today.
Yeah, and also because he famously likes quite sweet things as well. So and to the extent that it mentioned in this article, he likes Mexican Coke. So they make
very sweet,
very sweet. So instead, so basically they make it differently in Mexico with cane sugar rather than corn syrup or whatever it might be. So he must have that imported specially or something.
Well,
it shows the strength of character as well, I suppose, being able to kind of stick to that. I mean, I think there's kind of quite positives to be kind of drawn from it, really.
Very interesting.
Yes, well, as long as it's somebody else doing it.
Susan, tell us about the fact that we're probably being watched by a nation of dogs.
Well, 8 out of 10...
How rude.
Apparently, 8 out of 10 dogs enjoy the TV just as much as anybody else. So says the Mail on Sunday. It's researchers...
Get a grip.
It's researchers from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who are we to argue with them?
Yeah.
And they say they've questioned a lot of owners. I don't think they questioned the dogs. We don't know what the dogs actually... And they said a lot of dogs do actually, they're saying, engage with, kind of react to. They also claim that they watch full-length movies, but I don't think that possibly could be true. But that's what they say. Labradors are the dogs that particularly enjoy it. They particularly enjoy shows about nature, cartoons and cats.
Oh, what
you do surprise me. They don't like winter sports and skating. So it's not good news for dancing on ice.
Yeah.
I don't...
They're not dancing on ice.
Because it's basically just a white screen.
Do you think that's what they like, the colour and the movement?
Well, they're a bit they're sort of colourblind dogs, aren't they? Or they see in black and white.
Do you leave your TV on for company for your dog when you go out? I know a lot of people do that.
No.
Do you not?
I do, but then it switches itself off after about an hour anyway.
It's also quite a security thing to leave something like a radio on or a TV on. I think it's not better.
GB News radio we put on.
So they can hear your voice. Does that confuse the dog, though, if your voice comes out?
No, because I don't sound like this at home. This is my posh voice.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, you're a lot more... Yeah, he's a lot more northern on the phone as well, aren't you?
I love watching Frasier. And unfortunately, Frasier has a doorbell which is exactly the same as mine.
Oh.
And every time the blooming doorbell goes on Frasier, up goes my dog. She goes balmy towards the front door. And I have to just keep yelling at her, no, it's the television, please, stop it.
Yeah.
I wish they'd changed the doorbell. I must find a way to do it.
It might be easier to change your doorbell than get Frasier, which was made a while ago, to get them to change theirs. It's just a suggestion. But it might be easier to change your own doorbell.
Stop watching Frasier.
Who's this? Well, who's Spudman, Fraser?
So Spudman is the latest TikTok sensation. He literally just runs a van where he sells jacket potatoes. But he's attracted customers from all the other side of the world, essentially. People have travelled from Australia and New Zealand to Tamworth for his famous jacket potatoes. The other day he was giving out free jacket potatoes and people were queuing for several hours just to have these jacket potatoes. And I've been watching the videos and I can tell you they're really nothing special. It's genuinely just jacket potatoes with butter, cheese, beans, the usual ingredients.
It just seems like... show that if you put anything on TikTok, in the end, it'll get a following.
I think the guy, Spudman himself, seems slightly charismatic and fun, but that's about it. You know?
And I'm a Midlands person, so I don't want to cast aspersions, but is there not much else going on in Tamworth? I mean, it does seem a bit odd.
Particularly... No, because sometimes if you buy the jacket potatoes made by somebody else and they've been in the oven for several hours and they have really nice...
that is great, actually.
Yeah.
But the best ones you ever used to have are when you used to go to the bonfire and they'd actually done them properly and you ate them kind of out in the cold air. That used
and
to
you
be
always
lovely.
burned your fingers,
yeah.
didn't you? But
it did remind me of the Victoria Wood sketch where she...
Oh, Spudulike.
Spudulike, or Spudulike, she used to call it. But apparently Spudulike might be coming back. James Martin, the chef, is apparently going into partnership with Albert Bartlett Potatoes to bring back... I think there's very, very few Spadulicaes left.
Albert Bartlett, are they the red ones?
Are
they red potatoes?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a potato expert.
I like
but I do love a baked potato.
I love a baked potato.
There are some breeds.
Shall we all go to Tamworth?
Yes. Yeah, well, maybe we need to do a bit of research. There are some breeds of potato that bake better than others, aren't there?
Yeah, I don't know whether the Albert Bartlett... But they must be good for baked potatoes, otherwise presumably they wouldn't be promoting it, but I don't know.
Oh, I wouldn't mind going to a Spadulica.
What would you have? What would be your filling of choice?
It would be butter and cheese.
Yeah, oh, right, OK.
Do they still have them anywhere?
There are a few left.
There's only a few.
Only a few,
I've never been to one.
But we need to get it trending on TikTok so that Gen Z can enjoy the benefits of it.
Spadulica is a restaurant chain.
Spadulica.
Franchise.
Victoria Wood's got a lot to answer for, hasn't she?
You know what, I'd never heard of it until she did that sketch.
Spadulica. I can't call it anything else now either. It's terrible.
Albert Bartlett, I'm looking if he does the red potatoes. Oh, they are? Yes, they are.
Spudulike was founded by Kim Cully and Barbara Kane. The company was acquired then by the British School of Motoring in 1979,
right downhill.
which helped Spadulica to rapidly expand its business as a franchise. How weird that it was bought up by the British School of Motoring.
We did it. We've done a deep dive into potatoes here. My husband made them for tea the other day, but he did like potato skins with all different kind of fillings in,
I like
and then baked it back in. It was delicious. I mean, it's very simple, isn't it? But I was very impressed by his potato kind of management there. It was great.
Before we had potatoes in this country.
Well, it was a long time ago, because wasn't it Francis Drake who brought them back?
Yeah, from America.
Potato firm Albert Bartlett acquired a number of Spadulicaes in 2019 and then reopened them with an updated menu. And then, as you said, TV chef James Martin teamed up with them to launch an updated Spadulica menu.
For anyone watching, it is Spudulike.
No.
We have all just gone mad.
Yeah.
Spadulica is the way forward. And they are the red ones. I knew mashed potatoes.
Oh.
Isn't it like Nigella Lawson calls the microwave the microwave?
Yeah, but the difference is I don't think she knows any difference.
She doesn't know why.
No.
She can do what she likes.
Very odd. Who's Vicky McClure?
She is the star of...
There's Vicky McClure.
No, don't know.
No, she's the star of...
Line of Duty.
Line of Duty.
She's also in that big show at the moment called Trigger Point. And she was in This Is England, am I right? Is that the one she was in? Anyway,
I've never seen any of those.
Well, she's very, very good. She's an incredible actress, actually. And she's from...
She looks a bit like, what's-her-face from...
We're doing well with names
Bully and
here.
Sculder.
Oh, do you think so? Gillian Anderson.
Gillian Anderson, she's a great actress.
I thought, actually, you were going to say she looks a bit like Emma Thompson. I think she also has a bit of an Emma Thompson to her.
Anyway, what's she been saying?
Well, what she's been saying is that she would never have Botox because she is an actress. And thank goodness somebody is saying this, because isn't it worrying how many people do seem to think that that is the way forward? She's saying, obviously, whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60 or whatever, it's a privilege to be older.
Yeah,
she
but she
certainly
hasn't got
doesn't
line
need
on
it.
the forehead, has she?
She doesn't need it. Yeah, but fringe, that's the answer. No Botox, get a fringe. But yeah, I do think it's worrying now because so many people, apparently 900,000 injections are carried out in this country on people. And people, I was in Soho last night and I was wondering about, and you can't tell how old anybody is anymore. And all the young girls are having things that make them look a mixture of a fish and a cat, the trout pout and the weird eyes.
And they all look the same.
And they all look the same.
They look like dolls.
I would never.
Botox, Fraser?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Smile.
No, I've not had any of the lip injections either. I mean, that would raise a few eyebrows, wouldn't it? Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
I was thinking your forehead wasn't moving. No, but apparently young women are getting Botox done when they don't need it because apparently it stops you getting it. It's like a preemptive treatment.
Well, that's what they're being told. Obviously, it's a very good sales technique, isn't it?
Yeah.
But personally, I do think character and movement of your face is quite important. I have to say, it's only since I've been coming on the television, which I've only started doing in the last kind of 2 years.
Thinking about it.
No, I'm not. I just didn't realise how much I moved my face and how many kind of silly faces I pull and go, and I'm terrible. And obviously, I've always done it, and I was never. But I just have to get over that and realise that that's actually me, and that's what I do.
And not to have it done. But it might take...
Possibly a little late for that, but he doesn't need it. Yes, how dare you?
No, but when you get a bit old... Sorry. You know...
How very dare you?
I know.
No, yeah, well, no, I don't think that would... I think Noddy Holder looking like Noddy Holder is what you want. Why would you want anything else?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, you see, you know those pictures that you see and people go, what an amazing photograph. And it's always those older people in places where they're just a face full of wrinkles. And we always go, oh, God.
The character, but you don't want to look like it yourself,
yeah. But then as a society, we run away from it.
Yeah, we do. But I do think this whole, you know, the very kind of the up cheekbones, the slanty eyes, the pout. Personally, I don't think it looks good, but that's me. But we are entering a world, and if you go to America and you go, especially on the kind of, you know, on the West Coast, you walk around and a lot of people all look the same. And, you know, I do want to be able to differentiate one person from another.
American TV presenters, they all look the same.
Do they?
Yeah.
Do they?
They have the power cut, so the power bob.
Yeah, it's either a bob or it's the long flowing hair, and it's this very, very plaster face.
And it is a poison you're putting into yourself for no reason. I do think, I'm not sure at all that it's a good thing. You do see when it goes, especially in your lips and things, when it
It'll
goes
probably
wrong.
turn out to be a phase, and we'll come through it.
Hopefully, hopefully.
Well, in the meantime, if you want wrinkles and grey hair, you're on the right channel. I've got the grey hair. Oh, no.
Are you speaking for yourself?
Talking about me.
You're getting yourself into an awful lot of trouble this morning.
Well, look, I am grey and I have got wrinkles. I don't care. I'm 50 in 4 weeks. I don't care. I'm embracing it all.
Yeah, wow.
It's the way to go, I think. Yeah.
Vic, can you believe it? 50? Wow. I mean, it's a bit of a shock.
I can't believe it. You don't look 50. Is that what he's waiting for us to say?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I don't care. You either get old or you don't.
Well, the alternative is always worse.
Well, absolutely. No,
that's what you've got to remember.
So very quickly, who's the Masked Singer Owl? I don't know how long we've got. We've got 20 seconds.
The Masked Singer was unveiled. The last person to be kicked off was Lorraine Kelly. She was singing as an owl. And then the other thing we were going to talk about was the Traitors, but it would take me far too long to explain that.
But it's good.
It was good, but mainly my personal thing about it that I loved was Claudia Winkleman's wardrobe. So she looked fantastic, and I want all the clothes.
You can have them. They're all yours. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Looking ahead to today, most of us should see some sunshine at times, and for all, it will be feeling very mild. So we start the day actually with a touch of frost in the east, but here we'll see bright skies from the word go. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around and maybe the odd spit and spot of rain, but most of this cloud will tend to break up a little bit as we go into the afternoon, allowing some spells of sunshine. But up towards parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, we will see this band of rain move in during the afternoon, and that will be accompanied by some very strong winds. But with the winds coming in from the south, it's going to be a very mild day. Actually, some parts of northern Wales could see highs reaching 16 to 17 degrees. Into the evening, the rain just slowly moves its way southeastwards across parts of Scotland, eventually moving into northern England and the far north of Wales later on in the night. But to the south of it remains mild but rather cloudy. Could just see a touch of frost as the rain clears up across the far north of Scotland. So Monday morning, we start off rather grey but mild in the south. This rain actually becomes quite slow moving across parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So quite a grey, wet day to come here. But to the north of it, actually, it does start to cheer up and we will see some spells of sunshine, but also some blustery showers. Temperatures in the north cooler than on Sunday, but still mild in the south.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've been talking about that amazingly huge cruise ship most of the morning. Sharon's been in touch. Hi, Sharon. I never fancied cruising as a holiday. I always thought I'd feel confined. But me and my husband Colin went on our first cruise 8 years ago and we loved it. It's like being on a floating 5-star hotel and waking up in a different, beautiful place every morning. The best kind of holiday. See, that's how I feel about it.
Well, there you go. Oh, whatever floats your boat, quite literally. We'll bring you all the top stories in just a moment.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo,
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning to you. It's 9 o'clock, Sunday the 28th of January. This is what we've been covering on breakfast so far today, and after weeks of pressure over the post office scandal, the chairman's gone and there's new leadership being brought in. It's got to restore faith in the beleaguered institution. We're going to be chatting to Camilla Tominey ahead of her show about that later in just a moment.
The United Nations hits back as 9 countries stop their funding for UNRWA. That's the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees particularly. The allegations were that some of the United Nations staff may have been part of the original October the 7th attack on Israel.
King Charles spending his 3rd day in hospital recovering from prostate surgery. The Queen is reassuring us all that he's doing well.
A 2020 election rematch is looking more and more likely as Donald Trump takes aim at Joe Biden during a rally in Nevada overnight.
And don't let those January budget blues get you down. A new campaign's being launched today to help us all improve our finances in 2024.
And Craig Snell will be here with your weather.
Good morning. It's going to be a mild day for all of us out there, but we will see the return of some wind and rain. Find out where in a little bit.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Oh dear. Marion. Morning, Marion. Thanks, she says, oh, I love you, Stephen, but you start digging a hole and keep going. It's talking about wrinkles. She says, as someone who has a son your age, you've got to just be what you are and people can take it or leave it. I agree, absolutely. It's a nice thing about getting older. You don't care what anybody else thinks so much.
No. I think you do care about the wrinkles a bit, but I'd rather put up with them than Botox them.
Yeah.
Actually, Yvonne says, morning Yvonne, when they stop having Botox after years, it'll be like letting a balloon down. That would be a comeuppance, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it probably would be.
Serve you right. We're obviously being watched by a lot of dogs this morning, but they're probably watching us in brown and white. Because
yes.
Jenny from Rye, morning Jenny, has said, dogs can't see the colours red and green. It'll all be brown to them. They only have 2 cones, where humans have 3. My dogs bark at the TV when dogs come on, so they must be able to see them.
Yeah. It's interesting that you can't imagine how things see things differently. That's very weird.
Weird, isn't it? Yeah. But my dog looks at herself in the mirror.
Does she?
Yeah. I've got a mirror. For some reason, I think it was in the kitchen being moved from one place to another, and I stood it against a wall. And I noticed that she goes up to it and...
but does she think she must think it's another dog?
Well, I don't know. But then when I walk up behind her, I've kept the mirror there now because it's so funny. But when I walk up behind her, she looks at me in the mirror.
Yes, yeah.
So they obviously do see...
you from that.
But yeah.
Because apparently there's only humans, gorillas and dolphins that can recognise themselves in a mirrre.
Oh, how would they know that?
I can tell you how. It's not for broadcast, though, because it's a little bit naughty. But that's how the scientists work it out.
Oh, you've got me trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, I'll tell you in a minute.
All right.
But that's, yeah, no, that's true. It's weird, isn't it? I don't know why people... But the cat... See, the cat sees himself in a mirror and just ignores it.
Oh.
We sort of think, we start thinking it's another cat and freaks out. Isn't it strange?
How weird.
Oh, yeah,
if you know why, let us know. As long as it's not too rude to read out.
Yes, no, it's not
rude.
vulgar.
Oh.
It's just a little bit, you wouldn't want to talk about it on breakfast television.
OK.
Anyway, we better move on swiftly to our top story because after weeks of scandal, the Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, has said there's a need for new leadership at the Post Office as the outgoing chairman well, steps down. Well, or is nudged.
Agreed to step down,
yes.
maybe. And in just half an hour, Camilla Tominey will be joined by Kemi Badenoch. So let's join Camilla right now. This is going to be fascinating to hear the inside story of what was said on that phone call, Camilla.
Well, indeed, I think by mutual consent might just mean that he was sacked or at least told to go. We'll find out more from Kemi Badenoch, as you say. I mean, there's a lot of questions for the Business Secretary to answer, not just on this, but what she's been doing with that retained EU law bill. There's lots of Brexiteers in the party that are angry with her because they don't think that she has scrapped enough EU laws. We've also got the question of her leadership to discuss. As you'll have seen from the morning papers, she's across all of them. There are many Kemi-related headlines. I think The Sun on Sunday is even suggesting that she's being pitched as a new Thatcher, that she may be the only person who could possibly squeeze the Conservatives to victory at the next general election. But of course, that would involve the small matter of unseating the Prime Minister, which is not something she's currently said she's willing to do. So is it all just talk, or is she going to put herself in the frame? I'll try and find that out, and of course be discussing other matters, not least what's happened to this Canadian trade deal we were meant to be doing. Why haven't we signed a deal with the US? Why haven't we signed a deal with India? So lots to discuss. First time she's come on my show, and she's going to be live in the studio later.
Yeah, that's going to be worth watching. Also, actually, you're talking to Robert Buckland, aren't you? Because there's a lot to talk to him about, particularly in the wake of everything that's going on with the potential review into the Valdo Calacane case.
Indeed so. I mean, who can't have been moved this week by the statement that the families gave after that Nottingham Crown Court case concluded with him? He pleaded guilty to manslaughter. There's been a debate as to whether the CPS should have pushed for murder charges. I'm going to be asking the former Justice Secretary whether he thinks it's fair that the sentence is going to be reviewed, and talk in general about the situation that we now face with so-called care in the community. We know, don't we, that since the 60s and 70s, a number of what would have been called insane asylums were closed down because there was this feeling that they were too archaic. It was a bit too much like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. However, in this case, there's been a series of failures of these victims and their families. You know, why was this guy allowed to roam the streets when he wasn't on his antipsychotic medication? There seemed to be no monitoring of him. The families find out that he was under an arrest warrant since September 2022. The police told them he had no fixed abode. In fact, they discovered that he'd been living in a Nottinghamshire address for 6 months before he was evicted 2 days before the killings. Don't the Nottinghamshire Police and the Leicestershire Police have a case to answer here? Should heads roll? There's a huge amount to discuss, and I think that this is a case that's really resonated with the public because they could feel the pain and anguish of the families, not just because they've lost their loved ones, but also, as far as I could see, they seem to have been failed by every agency along the way that should have protected them and their children, and indeed, in the case of Ian Coates, a beloved grandfather.
Yes, as you say, I mean, it smacks of scandal, actually, doesn't it, the way they've been treated? Well, there's a lot to talk about at the moment, a lot of potential scandals, and you've got the very people who should be answering your questions. Fascinating stuff. Camilla, thank you.
Yeah, look forward to that 9:30. Now, Christmas, the post-Christmas time can be very difficult, which might be breathing a sigh of relief that perhaps some of it is over. A lot of us, of course, are then faced with the bills
Well, it's the credit card bills that now come, isn't it? And you think, why did I spend that much at Christmas?
Yeah, they call it the January budget blues, don't they?
That's right. Yeah, it's all about trying to deal with debt, not to be too frightened of it, but trying to sort of get an angle on it, really.
There is help out there, though, and asking for help is one of the most crucial things, but it's, of course, one of the hardest things to do. But anyway, the charity Christians Against Poverty have now launched a new online campaign hoping to help people improve their financial situations.
Our reporter Anna Riley tells you more.
Mum of four, Marie Bloom, was in thousands of pounds of debt that had built up over years. Her universal credit payments didn't cover her bills, and the cost of living crisis brought bailiffs to her door.
Basically, all the main bills, council tax, gas, electric, water, all the most important bills were the ones that were getting neglected because I had to feed the children first. I had all the bills ready that were going out that I were in debt with, And I had taken out loans to help me cover things like school uniforms and things that I wouldn't have had money for. I was literally making myself ill. Do you know what I mean? I would actually poorly. We worry.
Marie turned to money coaching charity Christians Against Poverty, and with their help, she's recently become debt-free.
Honestly, like a ton of bricks has been lifted off me. It's like amazing. Because I've literally suffered for years and years on my own about the debt and not telling anybody and trying to hide it from people. And it was difficult knowing that I was going to bed every night, knowing that I was getting in more and more debt and that I couldn't afford things for my children. I survived on the little bit of money that we had. And I made sure that kids had food on the table and clothes on their back and a roof over their head. But that, you know, I struggled to death every day to do that.
Helen Bolton helped Marie with her finances, and over the last year, the money coach has seen a sharp rise in people asking for assistance.
The cost of living has really tipped a lot of people over the edge with things like their gas, their electric, their water. So, I've been doing the job on and off for about 10 years, and I used to see lots of loans and catalogues and, you know, debt that had arisen perhaps because people were spending on the nice-to-have kind of things. What I found in the last 12 months or more is that more and more of the clients are coming to us where the problem is that they just can't pay the household bills.
Christians Against Poverty are now also providing free money help online, along with their face-to-face money coaching service.
Money worries are just rubbish. You know, it's stress, it's anxiety. Often it's not being able to enjoy life or pay the basics, and hey, no one wants to be in that position. So we are encouraging people to get a budget and beat those New Year blues. And over the next couple of months, there is a budget planner available that people can actually use to a bit of a template, some basic instructions to get their finances organised and feel like they're starting the year off on the right track.
It's hoped the campaign will help people swap their winter financial worries for budgeting success. Anna Riley, GB News.
Do you think it's such a big issue, actually, for those people who are... And the people who struggle just under the line for such a long period of time.
And the stress that causes,
Terrific.
too. Yeah, it's wonderful that they've started an online... That particular organisation has started an online help. So wherever you live in the country, you may well be able to get their help to sort out.
Yeah, just ask. And they won't... And the nice thing is they're not going to judge you. They're just going to want to help for free, which is even better.
Brilliant.
OK, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today, because it was a bit colder last night again.
So.
It's going up and down like a blooming yo-yo. So let's see what today's got in store with Craig.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Looking ahead to today, most of us should see some sunshine at times, and for all, it will be feeling very mild. So we start the day actually with a touch of frost in the east, but here we'll see bright skies from the word go. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around and maybe the odd spit and spot of rain, but most of this cloud will tend to break up a little bit as we go into the afternoon, allowing some spells of sunshine. But up towards parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, we will see this band of rain move in during the afternoon, and that will be accompanied by some very strong winds. But with the winds coming in from the south, it's going to be a very mild day. Actually, some parts of northern Wales could see highs reaching 16 to 17 degrees. Into the evening, the rain just slowly moves its way southeastwards across parts of Scotland, eventually moving into northern England and the far north of Wales later on in the night. But to the south of it remains mild but rather cloudy. Could just see a touch of frost as the rain clears up across the far north of Scotland. So Monday morning, we start off rather grey but mild in the south. This rain actually becomes quite slow moving across parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So quite a grey, wet day to come here. But to the north of it, actually, it does start to cheer up and we will see some spells of sunshine, but also some blustery showers. Temperatures in the north cooler than on Sunday, but still mild in the south.
I suppose it's good for this time of year, isn't it?
I suppose
it's chilly today, but, you know, we're moaning about the weather in January, so
yeah.
It's better than it could be.
I tell you what it is, it's not that it's bad necessarily, it's that it's unpredictable.
Yes, it's up and down all the time. It's different every weekend, isn't it?
If not whether to put the heating on or off.
I'm keeping it on at the moment.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you, to be perfectly honest. Look, with the news today that the chairman of the post office has, well, resigned.
After a phone call from Kemi Badenoch.
Yes, read into that what you will. We're going to be talking to a former sub-postmaster for his reaction. He's one of those who is a victim of the Horizon scandal, so we'll see what he makes of it all. That's coming up in just a moment.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. 2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
18 minutes past 9. There was a very interesting phone call last night between the business secretary, Kemi Badenoch, and the chief of the post office.
Who's only been in the job about 18 months, if that.
And I would love to know what was said. In fact, Camilla Tominey is going to be talking to Kemi Badenoch about it. Ooh, no, not so long from now. But it'll be lovely to hear what she says went on. But very clearly, it was decided that he would step down from his role.
Yeah, is it about just a clean sweep and starting afresh, or has he done something wrong?
There seems to be very much the hinting that he hasn't done enough, because, yes, you could say because he's only been in the job a year or so, he wasn't responsible for the awful things that went on.
I tell you what's interesting, though, because the guy who took over from Paula Venables as CEO, a guy called Nick Reed, on the big post office website, he's put a big piece on, which is under the heading Horizon Scandal.
Oh.
So, which is interesting to say we must do better and we're going to resolve all this and post office...
so he took over from Paula Venables?
In 2019, I think. So...
Righting the wrongs of the past, he writes there.
So, which is interesting, that at least they're being sort of upfront there. The thing is, what difference is it going to make in reality to people affected by this? He's saying all the right stuff, but is that enough?
It's a start. Well, it's not enough, is it? Because people need compensation, and they need it fast. Let's talk to a former postmaster and post office scandal victim, Christopher Head, who I think joins us now. A very good morning, Christopher. What's your reaction hearing that the boss has been pushed?
Yeah, I think we're quite clear that obviously he's been dismissed. I mean, it might be they're trying to do damage limitation in terms of the way that it's coming across, but I think we can easily say that he has been dismissed. And look, like you said, he wasn't responsible for the things that happened previously, that happened to all these postmasters. And he was clearly brought in order to change the good governance structure of the post office. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. But I think the reason it hasn't happened is because there are still so many people within post office itself, whether that's board members or lower down management, that still have that same culture problem ingrained within them. So until you clear out everything, just changing one or two personnel is not going to do the job that they wanted to do.
No, I mean, so I guess the argument with this is that you put someone in at the top who is going to do in effect, it's a top-down restructure, isn't it? I mean, is that
exactly? Yeah, I mean, it needs to be someone that comes in that basically is with a no-nonsense approach. That, the people that have looked over all of the things that's gone on or been involved in the group litigation. We still have the chief financial officer there at the post office who was there from 2015, and obviously he oversaw the group litigation and the aggressive tactics that post office used. Why are them people still there? And if them people are going to be involved with the new change of chairman, is he going to be able to change the culture? That's a very difficult question to answer.
And, it's funny that the more we hear about it, you still get the feeling, don't you, from the post office, that a lot of their people just don't feel they did anything wrong.
I think we've seen that over and over again if you watch the public inquiry hearings, that there's many people that they just have that adamant that they are right and the postmasters are wrong. And while that culture exists, how can anything ever change? I mean, I wrote to Nick Reed in 2021, and I had quite a long phone conversation with him. And that's where I saw that statement online where he said we need to right the wrongs of the past. That's exactly what we did. The problem is the wrongs of the past are not being righted, because what they're saying they want to do sounds great, in the statements that they make along with government, but the actual reality and the actions on the ground are very, very different, because it's penny pinching, it's litigious with lawyers, it's just nothing what the words that we were promised.
All right, so what would need to be done to right those wrongs? Is it about the money?
It's not just about that. Obviously, we need the accountability, but I think I've tried to structure this in a way that the accountability is going to take time. We know that, because the inquiry is going to run until end of this year, maybe into 2025. The Met Police are not going to start that investigation until the inquiry is completed. So we know that the accountability part, in order to get the right people, is going to take quite a bit of time. What we can't do is have the victims suffering for many, many more years to come. So we need to focus on the compensation so that people can rebuild their lives, while in the background accountability is being found. And it needs to be some kind of independent process, because having post office in control of it, or having government in control of it, when they are part of the problem, or over a cause of this, we are simply not going to get a resolution, because it's just going to be a lawyer on one side, a lawyer on the other side, trying to hammer out the difference. So we need something independent to take over the whole process and resolve all the disputes that are there.
For instance, what is your situation now? I mean, I know that, loss of job, loss of reputation, being made to feel like a criminal when you knew you weren't one, and then the money. What sort of compensation would help you? And have you had any?
Well, we had the small amounts from the group litigation in 2019, but here we are 5 years later, and we're still fighting over the problem. I mean, I'm part of the 555 in the GLO group, and we put a claim in starting of June last year, and which was obviously backed up by forensic experts with your tax records, with all of the documentation. And we had an offer in the 28th of December, which was less than 15% of the total claim value, because they are trying to use lawyers on both sides in order to litigate. And this is what I mean by we're so far apart. Somebody needs to come in from the outside, that is not from post office, not from government, that sits down as an ex-High Court judge or something like that, that says, under the terms of UK law or previous principles, these are the kind of awards and damages that should be given to people, and it needs to be set like that, and then the government just needs to pay them amounts.
We're almost out of time, Christopher. Just very briefly, I mean, in terms of money you've been offered, does it even repay you for the money that you lost?
No, that's where the problem is. The offer that's on the table doesn't even cover the past loss of earnings alone. Never mind all the other multiple heads of loss that are in there. There's nothing, it will not add on for things like the damages that are involved. Yeah. And it's because it's a litigation process where the attempt seems to be in order to minimise by penny pinching and obviously bureaucracy, everything in order to restore us back to the position we should have been in.
Yeah, Christopher, we've got to leave it there. Really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Isn't it appalling, though, after all that's happened and everybody's been talking about it, they're still being insulted?
Yeah, you've just got to forget the lawyers, just get out the chequebook, basically. Anyway.
Coming up, the Camilla Tominey Show from us. Goodbye.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support.